Welcome to Standing for Truth. I'm your host and moderator, Donnie Badinsky. Tonight, we're addressing a foundational question. Was Jesus crucified? Joining us, Eric Smith will be defending the affirmative, and Daniel will be presenting the negative. I'm looking forward to a clear and respectful debate on this important issue. I'm also excited to see how our guests here tonight argue, what their points will be, and what challenges are sure to arise. So Eric and Daniel, before we get into opening statements, let's get acquainted, break the ice a little bit. I'd like to know how you guys are doing in 2026. It's always nice to have fresh faces, new debaters here on the Standing for Truth debate platform in the debate coliseum. So Eric, why don't we start with you? Again, it's your first time here on the platform, so I appreciate you being willing to hang out with me for a couple hours here tonight. Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself and how's your 2026 coming along so far?
Okay, well, I'm getting some feedback on here, and I'm not sure if that's from my end or from yours.
I wonder if I'm not hearing any feedback, so I wonder if you've got is the debate open on another tab for you, because I know you're simulcasting.
That's exactly what it was. Okay. So now that I've clearly demonstrated that I'm an idiot, we can get on with the debate. Yeah, I'm Eric Zuckerfer. I call myself Zuckerfer because it was a name given to me by a Muslim on a radio show. He called me a kafir, and I go, I'm the kafir. Huh? I go, yeah. That's where I get that from. I don't use Smith because that's not my real name. It's a pseudonym because I've been doxxed before, and being a public school teacher, that's not always a good thing, especially when you get into these types of topics where people want to attack you. And they actually tried to get me fired from my job.
Wow.
as a deal. Oh, yeah, they went to the school. It was in that role. Anyway, I'm the host of the Crossing the Crescent discussion group. It's a YouTube live stream show every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if anybody wants to go over to the Crossing the Crescent discussion group and subscribe and catch some of those videos that we do over there, it's always a lively show with all kinds of great entertainment and information on Islam itself. I've been doing this for quite a while. I don't have a lot of subscribers to my channel. I'm not a very popular big guy, but I've been doing this for a while, and I believe that the topic itself on Islam, especially on what Islam has done historically. I'm a history teacher, so based on what Islam has done historically and to Christianity and the arguments that it is formulated and makes against Christianity, I think they need to be exposed. And that's what I do. I enjoy doing it, and I try to tell as many people as I possibly can about it.
Eric, thank you very much for your intro. I appreciate you helping us to get to know you a little bit. I do have your channel for anybody who wants to see more from you linked in the description box of this video. So, okay, this should be a good debate. Thank you for that. Daniel, not your first rodeo, not your first time here, and so it's always great to have you here for these debates and discussions. So Daniel, tell us, how have you been? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how's your 2026 going so far? I think you might be on mute. We do want to hear from you.
Lovely, Donnie. Lovely to be on your channel in 2026. I think it's my second time on 2026. I suppose it is. So yeah, 2026 is not a great start, I suppose, for me. It's going a bit slow, and yeah, I mean, lovely to be back here on your channel. I've been watching your channel. You're going absolutely bulldozing evolution and all of that sort of stuff. So it's good to tap in and listen to your channel sometimes. And yeah, I mean, well, I want to make this year a big year for my own presence on YouTube and to the debating Colosseum, not necessarily on your channel, but everywhere, wherever the possibilities show up. I'm willing to debate and engage with the Christian apologists and the audience. Some of the myths that go on between Islam and Christianity needs to be pulled down. It's 21st century. We cannot really be comporting these medieval legends, causing rifts in the ongoing ecumenical possibilities that exist between Islam and Christianity. So it's a great opportunity now in the modern day with this social media, YouTube, and live streaming. It's a fantastic opportunity to pull down these stale marketplaces that have really drummed up the narrative of medieval times of antagonism between Islam and Christianity, whereas these two faiths, in my opinion, are most friendly faiths. They are parallel faith traditions to, basically out of the cosmic arrangement to glorify the kingdom of God. And I'm here to do that exact business and pull down any medieval legends and throw them to bin where they belong. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. The online world definitely gives us the benefit and opportunity to engage each other, those of differing views. Helps us, as I like to say, to get out of our theological echo chambers. It's important to come together and to discuss and debate these issues in a professional manner. Daniel, glad you're enjoying the debunking evolution content. Looks like that's something we all here on the panel have in common. We don't believe we're related to banana plants, whales, and pine trees. So that's good. That's anti-science. So Eric, Daniel, thank you very much for helping us to all get acquainted before the showdown begins. We got some good people in the chat. Shamgar Mine, appreciate it. Says, how's it going, SFT family? We are doing good, and we are ready for a great debate again on the question for anybody just joining us. Was Jesus crucified? Eric Smith is taking the affirmative, and Daniel is presenting the negative. I've also got Daniel's channel linked in the description box for those that want to see more from him. Okay, format-wise, I want to make sure we're all on the same page here tonight, gentlemen. Opening statements, we've got 12 minutes each. Since Eric is in the affirmative, he'll be kicking us off for tonight's debate. What I can do, gents, is give you guys a 1-minute warning for each section, just to help you guys understand, kind of start winding things down at that point. Then we jump into rebuttals, 8 minutes each to respond to each other's points and arguments brought up in the opening statements. Then everybody's favorite part of these formal debates, the cross-examination. So it's going to be a fast-paced and I'm sure engaging cross-exam, 15 minutes each, total of 30 minutes. Then we jump into closing statements, 5 minutes each, good opportunity to wrap up our thoughts, wrap up our points, and land the plane on the debate tonight. Then we jump into audience questions. So this is where we get you guys involved. As you're watching and enjoying tonight's debate, firstly, hit that like button, share around. I'm sure you're liking it or else you wouldn't be here. So hit that like button and send in your questions, objections, challenges. Perhaps you hear something tonight that Eric argues or a point that Daniel brings forth and you disagree with it and you want to challenge it. Maybe you even wish you were here live debating them yourselves. Send those challenges and questions in the form of questions. I'll bump super chats to the top. And we look forward to interacting with your comments during the Q&A period. We'll probably go for about 25 minutes of audience questions. And so, okay, I think we're on the same page. We're ready for a good, smooth debate. Eric, I see your slides at the bottom of the screen. Would you like me to put those up right now?
Please do. Yep.
Sure. So we got those up. And whoever's not presenting, I'll put backstage to make the presenter front and center. So Eric, you just let me know when you're ready and I'll start your timer. Reminder, you got 12 minutes.
Gotcha. Okay. Anytime you're ready, go ahead and let me know when I'm starting.
You're good.
Okay. Well, thank you, Donnie, for hosting the show, agreeing to do that. I really do appreciate you giving us a platform to discuss this. Thank you for Daniel for accepting the challenge that I had on this topic. This is one of those topics that's near and dear to my heart as a Christian, because this is exactly where Christianity and Islam diverge. And it is on Jesus Christ. Who is Jesus Christ? What did Jesus Christ do? And what he means to us as human beings, as his creation. When we look at this debate, though, when we look about what this debate is about, this is about a historical claim. This is not about a theological claim. This is about a historical claim, a claim in the Quran that is simply, demonstrably not correct. Quran 4:157 clearly states that Jesus Christ was not crucified on a cross, meaning he was not hung on a cross. To be crucified is to be hung on a cross. And that he was not killed, which is another demonstrably untrue statement. Now, if you have two demonstrably untrue statements within one verse of the Quran, that makes the Quran wrong. And if the Quran is wrong, then Islam is wrong. If Islam is wrong, Muhammad is wrong. If Muhammad is wrong, 1.9 billion souls, eternity is contingent upon a wrong historical event, a wrong event that can be demonstrated in history. As I said, this is not theological, this is historical. Well, how do we determine historical events? Historical events, I'm a historian, I'm a history teacher, and we use what we call the historical method. So in order to determine a historical event, you have to look at a couple things. Number one, you have to look at the early attestation of the event. Is the earliest attestation within a reasonable time frame that the event occurred? The second thing you need to look at is the eyewitness testimony. Who were the eyewitnesses? Were the eyewitnesses, did they have the ability to witness the event? Or was there, was one guy in Madagascar and the other guy clear up in Russia? You have to have comportability there. The third thing is multiple attestation. It isn't just one single source document like the Quran. It is multiple attestation where you have to have multiple people coming in and saying and attesting to the same event. And then lastly, if you have what we call hostile or a hostile witness coming in and attesting to or to confirm what you believe, even though they disagree with you on all kinds of other things. Now, the Bible's claim that Jesus was crucified on a cross in the first century and died on that cross meets all of this criteria of the historical method. It was early, it is multiple, you have eyewitness testimony, and you have hostile witnesses attesting to the same thing. The Quran, it meets none of this criteria. This is 600 years after the fact, single-sourced, by a man that had no idea, had no connection to the events or the culture or the language that was there. This is one event that separates Christianity from Islam. Now, we have evidence from the Bible on both the crucifixion and, of course, the resurrection. There's extra biblical evidence that I'm going to cite tonight, attesting to the fact that Jesus did die on the cross. And when I say all serious scholarship, I'm talking about the type of people who publish in historical peer-reviewed journals, theological peer-reviewed journals. The all serious scholarship says that Jesus died on the cross. Period. Islam denies what the Bible teaches. It denies what the extra biblical evidence shows, and it denies what the modern scholarship affirms. Now, I don't know what Daniel's going to claim, whether, he said, did Jesus swooned, or, Simon the Cyrene magically jumped up on the cross when Jesus wasn't looking. I don't know what he's going to cite tonight, but that's essentially where most Muslims go with this. So tonight's debate is about sorting this out. Now, let's just go ahead and get this appeal to authority out of the way. When we start talking about serious scholarship and people looking at who really says that Jesus died on the cross, well, the hero of most Muslim apologists, Bart Ehrman, may Allah be pleased with him, says that the crucifixion of Jesus by the Romans is one of the most secure facts we have about his life. John Dominic Crossan, the leader of the Jesus Seminar, a very liberal group of theologians, says that absolutely for granted that Jesus was crucified under Pontius Pilate. And you have Jewish scholars set that Jesus being crucified is the strongest evidence. You have skeptic scholars from the Jesus Seminar saying that Jesus' death on the cross is an indisputable fact. Then you have historical scholars. Marcus Borg says essentially the same thing. And then you have, of course, traditional Christian scholars. James T.D. Young says that Jesus' life on the cross is an assured thing. Now, the reason why Muslims deny this is because of this verse. And in this verse, it says, because of their saying, we slew the Messiah. And of course, we can argue that, no Jew is going to say that Jesus was the Messiah, but let's just pretend and go along with Muhammad here and say, okay, maybe you had some Jews mockingly would say this. Okay, fine, no problem. But then it goes on to say, Jesus, son of Mary, Allah's messenger, they slew him not, nor crucified him. That is a historical affirmation. That is a historical statement saying that he was not crucified. That is demonstrably not true. Then it says, but it appeared so unto them. Those who disagree concerning or in doubt, therefore, have no knowledge thereof. In pursuit of conjecture, they slew him not for certain. Of course, there is nobody that has any conjecture, and nobody is in doubt of whether this happened. The only people that are in doubt that this happened is somebody that was 600 years later, 700, 800 miles away, in a completely different culture, in a completely different, using a completely different language, who had no idea what he was talking about. This is a historical statement. This is a statement 600 years later. I just said that there is, now this is important. There is zero credible support for this statement anywhere. Zero. There is no credible support for this statement. But yet Muslims across the globe, 99% of Muslims across the globe believe that this statement is true. And this fails the historical method as defined by Merriam-Webster, as I told you earlier, in every single step. So what does the Bible teach about another gospel? Well, when we talk about what Paul tells us in Galatians, if I or an angel, that kind of sounds familiar. If an angel tells you another gospel other than what I am preaching to you, let that person be accursed. Who did Muhammad get his new gospel, per se, Injil, from? Sounds just like what Paul was talking about. Let that person be an anathema. Let that person be damned. Let that person be accursed, is what Paul is saying here. The idea that Christ was not crucified is satanic. Jesus tells us in Matthew, when Peter says, hey, I'm not going to let you go die on the cross, Jesus, he says, get behind me, Satan, for your eyes are not on things of this world. So he's telling Peter that if you want me not to die on a cross, that is satanic. Then you compare that to the Quran. What does the Quran teach? Oh, they taught it, or he was not slain. He was not crucified. So what does that make the Quran? What does that make Muhammad? There's a syllogism there, I'm thinking. And anyway, when we look at the Bible, we look at early church fathers, we look at early sources, and we even look at Gnostic sources. They all say Jesus was crucified. And I'm going to go through a laundry list of different passages here of Jesus predicting his death. In Luke, back here, he predicted in Matthew, he predicts it in Luke. I'm going to die. I'm going to be crucified. In Mark, hey, guys, look at here. So they're going to take me and they're going to crucify me. Here in Mark again. In Mark, when he's praying to God, he said, God, I don't want to die, but, it's going to happen. In Matthew again, he's predicting his death. Did he die on the cross? Well, look at what the Gospels say. The Gospel says in Matthew, he gave up his spirit. In Mark, it says he breathed his last. When you breathe your last, you're dead. In Luke, same thing. He breathed his last, he's dead. John, he gave up his spirit, he's dead. So all four Gospels say that he died. And then when you look at what the Bible also teaches, it teaches that he was crucified, he was risen. If you're risen, you're going to raise from what? Being dead. So this is all over the place in the Bible, in the Pauline epistles, in the Johannine literature, in the Petrarian literature, in Acts, in Romans. It's all over the place. My favorite's right here in 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians 15. This is a early church creed. An early church creed before Paul's conversion, oh, by the way, and Paul corrupted everything. This is within 6 months of the death of Jesus, is what almost all scholarship is saying now. The death of Jesus on a cross. So if you go in there and you read 1 Corinthians 15, it says that he was buried and he was raised from the dead. That's early. That is as early attestation as you can possibly get, as a matter of fact. More here on what Jesus is dying. I'm overdoing it. Then you have extra biblical evidence. You have the Jewish Talmud. This is a hostile witness saying that he was crucified. You have the Roman historian Tacitus saying that he was crucified, hostile witness. You have Josephus, a hostile witness, saying that he was crucified. You also have Luciano Samosata, hostile witness, saying he was crucified. You have
1 minute left.
Gotcha, saying he was crucified. You have, and this is extra biblical evidence, this Celsus, the philosopher, 2nd century, was crucified. You have Pelagian, he was crucified. Then you have early church fathers saying that he was crucified. Clement of Rome, Polycarp, a disciple of John, Ignatius, the disciple of John, all saying he was crucified. Irenaeus, the disciple of Polycarp. All of these people say Jesus was crucified on a cross and died. The Bible, the early church fathers, extra biblical sources all say he was died in the first, all the way back to the 1st century. But yet you have one guy 600 years later says, no, it didn't happen. Who are you going to believe?
Eric, just on time. It's like you've done this before. I appreciate it. That's 12 minutes. And 12 minutes flew by. I feel like I blinked and it was over. Okay, let me reset the timer. To the audience, anybody just joining us, reminder to send in those questions, send in those challenges for those that want to guarantee that the argument they make or the challenge that they present is presented to our guests. I'll bump super chats to the top. We'll have roughly 25 minutes of audience Q&A. I enjoy the audience Q&A periods because it helps us to expand on the topic. Gentlemen, we've hosted close to 500 debates on all sorts of topics. And I think this is the first time that we've hosted a debate with this specific resolution. So we're making history and I'm glad that we're doing it. So Eric, thank you for your opening statement. I've reset the timer. Daniel, the floor is yours. You have 12 minutes. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Donnie, and thank you, Eric. As expected, I've got to deal with some of the legends that have been repeated time and again in the history and elaboration of Christianity, and later on contested by Christian converts to Islam in the 7th century. So postulating many different theories, several different theories, alternatives about what really happened during Jesus' time. And we also have this continued assertion of Jewish people. So this is what I'm dealing with right now. And obviously, there are references, as you pointed out, in the gospel accounts of Jesus' death and resurrection. And so your position, you sort of deem as a solid one. Therefore, I need to really do some work to shake those foundations and sort of give you an idea of what is historicity and what isn't historicity. Okay, so let me deal with this. Some of the names that you really brought up. Bart Ehrman. Who even considers Bart Ehrman as being brilliant? He's the dumbest fool in the modern age. Having studied the gospel accounts, a person who resolves to abandon faith in the gospel teachings, how can you even consider him to be brilliant or of any credibility that I should believe in him and his accounts of whether Jesus was crucified or not? Being a secular historian, he just repeats those legends because as a historian, remember, as a secular historian, you're not into dogma. So all you have to do is find out a pathway for Jesus's exit. So how did Jesus exit? It has to be through a death and most likely through crucifixion. So if that's the claims that were circulated, if those were the legends that were created, Bart Ehrman has no problems adopting those tropes and continuing to say, okay, that could have been the likely case with Jesus, right? Being crucified. But to be dead honest with you, I don't consider Bart Ehrman as a brilliant scholar of the Bible or anything like that, because he has failed and embarrassed his own conscience when he has disbelieved in some of the most salient teachings of Jesus Christ in the gospel that are actually objective teachings, beneficial teachings to the entirety of the human race. So when a person can denounce that, no wonder he's a fool. And I don't really consider fools for any worth. Okay. So Bart Ehrman, get him out of the place. The guy that you quoted, the earliest historian, Tacitus, the first century, his works in the first century is when he sort of confirmed the legends or stories that were really constructed post 70 AD. Okay, so he wasn't even writing biographical material. If you know about Tacitus, what he has written about the Judo-Roman Wars, Jewish Roman Wars, he was not writing a biography on Jesus or early Christians. He wasn't doing that. So his history book was focused on a particular theme. And he made a passing comment picked up by the legends that were circulating during his time. So he just says Christus was crucified by Pontius Pilate. Does he verify though? Tacitus was one of the senators in Roman Empire. He had the approaches to the administrative accounts of the Roman Empire. And surprisingly, he doesn't quote these references. If Romans were doing certain things, if Romans were administering Judea in the first century, obviously they were maintaining court logs, trial logs, all of this documentation. Okay. And Tacitus, being a Roman, an elite Roman person, having had access to the administrative catalogs, does not cite a historical evidence about Jesus' crucifixion. He just makes a passing comment about Christus being crucified, as was popularly spoken during his lifetime early in the second century. This is not historicity. This is not biographical material where he's arguing or presenting historical evidence for Christ's crucifixion. You would expect him to do so because he had access to the administrative records and the court catalogs and trial logs of the Roman administrative procedures in first century Judea. But he does none of that. Why? He just banks on the legendary stories that were being circulated. Before him, Josephus, who writes towards the end of the first century, what does he do? He just maybe makes a comment that Jesus was Christ, but later on we have what is called the evidence from the 4th century, early 4th century, that Eusebius is the one who smuggles into Josephus' accounts the narrative that Jesus was crucified, which Josephus, by the way, never mentions. So the secular scholarship, seriously doubt on what Josephus has to say about Jesus and how the information got smuggled in to Josephus' account. And even Tacitus doesn't make it a point. He doesn't refer to Josephus' account. Josephus, again, was known to the Roman Empire. As such, the Roman historian Tacitus should be privy to the accounts of Josephus, and he doesn't quote Josephus. What does it tell you? It tells you that there is no historicity to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And this is the information that was captured out of the legends and the storytellers. And Tacitus wasn't even serious because it wasn't a thing for him to investigate Christianity. He wasn't serious about Christian faith or the biographical material of Jesus Christ. He wasn't serious. It wasn't his thing. He wasn't dealing with it. So he just made a passing comment, just like Herodotus, going back, a contemporary historian, I suppose, during the exilic times. May not have been contemporary, but still, the standards of those historians were pretty low bar. Historians such as Herodotus sort of narrates ants the size of foxes mining gold for people in India. Do you want to believe in these historian stories? They are no good. They're not credible sources of information. All right? So just drop it out. Tacitus, Josephus, we have a clear account of scholars mining for potential smuggling during the early 4th century through Eusebius of Caesareus' accounts of the records of the Josephus talking about Christ's crucifixion. There is no early records of it. So all of these myths and legends that were spoken of people were loosely attested by not contemporary historians, though. Tacitus wasn't a contemporary, early 2nd century historian. Okay, Josephus himself, late first century historian. And if they are capturing the legends and myths, especially when you should know the resurrection narrative really evolves within the gospel accounts post 70 AD. Prior to 70 AD, that's where you should expect historical information from the earliest eyewitnesses. Okay, and the criteria that you laid out, Eric, right here, early attestation, you have none. You said you have it, but your view of what historical method is, maybe a historical method has a certain metric, which is early attestation, eyewitness testimonies, multiple attestations, and hostile attestations. Okay, this is a credible criteria for what a historical method would look like. But your assumptions that go on to fill these criteria, they are not worthy. They are not as you think they are. Prior to 70 AD, we don't have early attestations of Jesus' crucifixion. Peter does not do that, although he was one of those witnesses in the courtrooms where Jesus was led into trial, denying Jesus time and again, right? He doesn't write any biographical material about how Jesus was crucified. Paul himself doesn't do it. You should expect Paul to do that because Paul was a prolific writer. He wrote several letters, what and whatnot. Not to omit Peter's capabilities, though. Although all the gospel writers make Peter look like a fool, okay, which God forbid he wasn't. He was a disciple of Christ. He was not a fool like as being projected in the gospel accounts. Okay, he is a prolific writer himself, but he does not give you any biographical material of Jesus' crucifixion. All that is quoted in Paul's literature is dogma: death, burial, resurrection, atonement, justification, and resurrection. This is dogma. This is not biographical material, let alone the court logs and the trial logs from the Roman Empire. None of this is valid. None of this is credible. This is what the Quran calls conjecture. Conjecture. Dhann. Illa ittiba' al-dhann. The Quran says you rely on conjecture. That's what it is. Because there is no credible historical source or attestation of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. In the early attestation, which you think was beautifully fulfilled by the gospel accounts, there is none. James doesn't do it. James, in fact, writes his letters prior to even
30 seconds left.
Okay, Nero's destruction prior. James hasn't got it. Eyewitness testimonies, none of these eyewitnesses, including Mary, the mother of Christ, has any biographical material of Jesus' crucifixion. Multiple attestations, all of those that you reckon to be ones, were later when the doctrine and the dogma was developed, post 70 AD. Okay, hostile attestations, again, these hostile writers were best conjecturing the Jewish people, and some of the secular ones, the Roman ones, are just inclusive of the legends and stories that were being circulated during that period of time. So this tells you your claims have no grounding, no credibility, but only conjecture.
Okay, thank you, Daniel and Eric, for those opening statements. Those flew by. We've set the foundation. We've got several points and arguments on the table to now engage, respond to, and interact with in our rebuttals. So the audience, reminder, we will be having an audience Q&A. I am caught up on your questions that have come in, but we're looking for more in order that we can have a Q&A that helps us to expand even more on tonight's topic to keep things comprehensive. So, okay, rebuttals. We have 8 minutes each to respond, uninterrupted time. And therefore, Eric, I will unmute you whenever you're ready. Please let me know. I'll do the same thing, roughly 30-second to 1 minute warning. And okay, the floor is yours, Eric. I'll start the timer on your first word.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to get this thing to work. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot.
No, according to evolution, things are supposed to get better on their own. So we could sit here and wait a couple million years.
It's not mutating fast enough. Okay, exactly. I think I figured it out. Okay, let's go. All right, let's go ahead and start with this word conjecture that that Daniel is alluding to. This conjecture that he keeps inferring is 600 years after the fact. That is quite a bit more of a time period than a decade or two. 600 years. So this conjecture is a canard. The eyewitness of Mary, Luke interviewed Mary. So that's in the Gospel of Luke. Let's go ahead and talk about his opinion of Bart Ehrman. I agree. Let's just leave it at that. But Muslims consider him authority. Let's see, the gospel accounts, you admit that they're first century, and so do I. The gospel accounts, folks, the gospel, I mean, John, the gospel of John, in John 5:2, it says, now there is in Jerusalem 6 colonnades, 6 with roofs at the pool of Bethesda. That had to have existed prior to 70 AD because they were destroyed when Rome sacked Jerusalem in 70 AD. So John's before 70 AD. I don't know where he comes up with these dates. Well, I do know where he comes up with these dates. He comes from secular historians, and they say that they were after 70 AD because Jesus predicted the destruction of the temple. We know that Luke was written before Acts. Acts ends with Paul in jail in Rome, and that is 64 AD. So we know Luke is at least 60 AD. So are we getting a little bit closer to the event early attestation? And we know that Matthew and Mark were written before Luke, so that pushes it back to 50 AD. That's a little bit earlier attestation of what we're talking about. Then you mentioned something about Tacitus, not being able to trust Tacitus. Tacitus was a Roman historian. He's not going to get his information from Christians. Christians were hated by the Roman Empire. They thought they were a bunch of traitors. So he's not just going to flippantly take people's word for this. He's going to research this. The guys, even I'm not going to say a senator is, a very credible person based on our current state of senators. But the fact of the matter is that this is as credible as you can get when you talk about a historian. So to dismiss Tacitus is just, well, let's just go ahead and dismiss Suetonius. Let's go ahead and dismiss all the other historians that wrote in the 1st and 2nd century, because, well, we know how they are. That's silly. We can't know anything if you do that. And let me read this quote by Tacitus. I mean, come on. It doesn't say anything about his crucifixion, really. Here's what it says. It says, Nero fastened the guilt on a class of hated for their abominations called Christians. He didn't like Christians. By the populace, Christus, and from the name who had its origin. What did he happen? He suffered the extreme penalty under the reign of Tiberius at the hands of Pontius Pilate. He hated Christians, and he says that Jesus suffered the most severe penalty, extreme penalty, under Pontius Pilate. I don't know how you get better than that, but maybe Daniel has something in the 1st century that says that Jesus didn't die. That's just as strong. And then he said Flavius Josephus. He said that Eusebius inserted this. I'm calling bullshit. I'm sorry. I'm be so crap. The bullshit. That's not true. That's not. I don't know why you would introduce that into a debate where somebody can go in and check it just like that. And I did. There's nothing on record that says Eusebius did that. We have. Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. But the idea that it was embellished is true. I would agree that maybe Eusebius embellished it. But the fact was, Eusebius said that he was crucified. That much we know is true. That's first century, early second century attestation. You don't get better attestation than that. And if there is better attestation, I would like to know what your standard for early attestation is. Is it 600 years after the fact? Is that early? Then you talked about the account of the resurrection evolved prior to 7. Dude, Paul is writing his letters in the 50s. And in his letters, it's saying that Jesus Christ was crucified. But not even, I mean, I'm not even going to go with that. I'm going to go back again, like I cited 1 Corinthians 15. 1 Corinthians 15 clearly states, and this is an early Christian creed. Modern scholarship is telling us today that this early Christian creed was written and being recited in Jerusalem, the very place where it could have been discredited, within 6 months of the cross. Now, if you can't get any earlier attestation than that, I mean, you would need a photograph in order to get earlier and better attestation than what you have in 1 Corinthians 15, 3-8. That's what that is what current contemporary scholarship says. So don't give me this, oh, we don't have early attestation of the crucifixion. It did not. That's simply not a true statement. I went on to talk about the dating of the Gospels themselves. And you yourself admitted that the Gospel accounts are first century documents. Okay. First century documents state that Jesus Christ died on the cross. I would like to know, and I'm going to ask you this in the cross, just to let you know. I want to know what first century documents that you are aware of, that you can cite, that say that Jesus didn't die on the cross. I have a mountain of evidence here that clearly demonstrates that, according to the Bible, according to early extra biblical sources, according to a continuance of written attestation through the early church fathers, that Jesus did die on a cross in the first century. I would like to hear what evidence you have that says that he didn't. Now, if you're going to go ahead and start, I could even go over to the tafsir and show you how bogus the tafsir is on a lot of this. When they say that Simon the Cyrene or somebody else died in his place, I didn't hear any explanation in your opening statement on what did happen if Jesus didn't die on the cross. Why are they full of conjecture and doubt? The fact of the matter is that all of history, all of serious scholarship says that Jesus Christ did die on a cross in the first century. All of serious scholarship affirms that as a historical fact.
30 seconds.
The Quran denies this. When the Quran denies a historical fact, the Quran is therefore wrong. If the Quran is therefore wrong, Islam is wrong, Muhammad is wrong, and your eternal soul is completely dependent on something that is easily demonstrable as being wrong. Why would you choose to believe something that you know is not true? I rest.
Eric, thank you very much for that 8-minute rebuttal to the audience. I see the questions coming in. We're all caught up, and keep sending them in. Okay, Daniel, I've reset the timer. You have 8 minutes as well, and I'll start the timer on your first word. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you again, Eric. Look, what Muslims might have thought in the 6th century, it's irrelevant. Okay, what is relevant to deal with this particular subject matter is what really happened during the 1st century, and how did Jesus exit? That's where the entire focus should be. Okay, so Jesus was a lively figure, and he exited. And what is the possible explanation? The possible explanation is the pursuers would go like, we killed him. Okay, we got rid of him. While none of the disciples, according to Luke's gospel, stood the ground. all of them fled. I mean, even one of them just gave away his undergarment and fled the scene. There was no eyewitness to what really happened with Jesus when the pursuers came hunting him down. Okay? So let's end it there. That's where the story ends. We don't know what really happened. And then what we have is immediately, as you said, in the 6 months, we have claims by the Jewish people. They're like, we got rid of him, we killed him. All right. And then there is these stories spinning around. He was taken into trial. He was led into trial. He was taken to Pilate, Pontius, who crucifies him. None of this historicity. There is no historical record of Roman administration freeing a guy who is an insurrectionist at the Passover. There is no such tradition. There are no records in Roman administration of having contracted the tradition of freeing an insurrectionist on the Passover. And imagine Pontius Pilate, the dumb MF, who frees an insurrectionist such as Jesus Barabbas, okay? And during the time of festivity, high traffic season, and imprisons a pacifist leader who declares to him, kingdom is not mine. Imagine that. How dumb MF would have been, Pontius Pilate would have been to do that. Risking his own title, risking his role and responsibilities. Would he do that during high traffic season? Free an insurrectionist such as Jesus Barabbas, who was like a messianic figure. He would free him and put in prison Jesus, the son of Mary, even though he is like claiming that he's not the king. The kingdom is not mine. Do you think that that's a possibility? Do you reckon? This is why I'm saying there is no historical material about Jesus' crucifixion. The early attestations are not from the disciples. James, the brother of Jesus, the just, silent, he's the one who writes even before Paul started writing. And his writings don't have this biographic material about Jesus' crucifixion. If that was important, if death, burial, resurrection was important to Christian faith, and without which there is no Christian faith, if that's how it was, then James the Just, the leader of the early Jewish movements, he doesn't write anything on that. What does it tell you? What does it tell you? It should tell you there is no historicity to these legendary stories that were developed post 70 AD. And then the Quran 600 years later informs you, that's the conjecture that they relied on. And by the way, I want to just clarify this, that you pointed out that I did not say what really happened to Jesus in the Quran. There is no swoon theory or there is no substitution theory in the Quran. These are just legends, again, by Christian converts to Islam who converted to being Muslim. These are the ones who are trying to supply alternative explanations that a swoon theory would have happened, or Jesus might have gotten substituted by some other Simon or whatever it is, or Judas the Iscariot. None of this is true. None of this is claimed in the Quran to be true. All that the Quran says is the Jewish people suspect that to be the case because the majority, remember the Sanhedrin who were pursuing Jesus Christ? Jesus just, they couldn't take Jesus under their grips. Okay? And the plausible explanation that they made after they pursued Jesus was that we got rid of him, we killed him, or we crucified him. Even they were not sure, as the Quran says, whether they killed him or they crucified him. All of this was legendary development of the story. And the masses, they believed it. The masses, they had to believe in some form of exit for Jesus, who happened to live with them. So what is a form of exit? They wouldn't believe that he was taken unto heaven, like the Quran says. There has to be some form of exit, and the probable exit would be the Jews killed him or crucified him. And there is no historicity to this. Nobody, and remember Tacitus, I quoted him, I did not say that he did not write about Jesus' crucifixion. I didn't say that. What I said was he just mentions a passing legend and does not bother himself to attest the fact through historicity. He had access to the administrative logs, trial court logs, all those Roman administrative record keeping. But he does not concern himself by citing these historical records. He doesn't do that. He doesn't even cite Josephus. And I'm sure he would have known Josephus's works because Josephus was aligned with the Roman Empire. So all of this tells you what? That there was no historical grounding, and these were just legends that kept evolving in that society during that period of time. And how do we know that these were legends? Because of the inconsistent story build-up in the gospel accounts. Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, the inconsistency with which they narrate this storyline of Jesus' arrest, prosecution, trial, crucifixion, burial, and resurrection, it's heavily adulterated, heavily inconsistent. Okay, and from this comes out of the narrative the dogma which Tacitus records. The dogma that some people believed that he was crucified. That's all. He's not serious on that. He's not writing biographical information of Jesus Christ. So you have no early attestations, zero eyewitness accounts. James should have done it. Peter should have done it. There is none. Peter was a prolific writer. Go and read Peter's accounts, letters, Peter 1, Peter 2. He's a good writer. He's not a kind of Satan or a fool as projected in the gospel accounts. He's not. He was a disciple of Christ, a reliable disciple of Christ, in fact. Okay? And he does not write about it. So the earliest witness doesn't say anything about it. What does it tell you? It tells you that you should not rely on conjecture or the Jewish bias or the Jewish storytellings. They wanted to get rid of Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ just disappears from the face of the earth, and they cook up these stories of having gotten rid of him, having killed him, or having crucified him. All right. So that's my rebuttal right there. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel and Eric, for those rebuttals. We've now concluded opening statements of 12 minutes, rebuttals of 8. So plenty of points now to directly engage in cross-examination. Some quick ground rules for our cross-exam. We have 15 minutes each for a total of 30 minutes. Let's do our best to ask direct and focused questions and answer directly as well. Let's give each other a little bit of time to lead up to the question if necessary. Sometimes there's context, and give each other a little bit of time as well to answer the question before we move on. So with that, Daniel just ended with his rebuttal. Therefore, Eric, will give you the first 15 minutes to lead the way in cross-examination, and I'll start the timer now. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Great. All right. So, Daniel, just to revisit what you said about all the apostles fleeing. When exactly did the apostles flee? When was this in the gospel narrative?
So we do see in the Gospel of Luke, I suppose it is, or in the Gospel of Mark, I'm not sure. Maybe it's in the Gospel of Luke, where Luke says that every one of them fled when the Sanhedrin, when the guards, temple guards, came to arrest Jesus.
Oh, okay.
Every one of them who was standing there actually flees.
They fled when Jesus was arrested.
That's correct. They flee. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So after Jesus was arrested, what did they do? Did they stay fled?
Do you reckon it's in the Gospel of Luke?
Of course, I recognize the Gospel of Luke. I'm asking you what happened to the disciples after you said that they fled. Jesus was taken, was arrested by the Sanhedrin and put on trial.
We don't really know. We don't really know what happened, but that's the.
We don't know. Okay, but we know that they fled, but we don't know that what we do know is they didn't see the crucifixion, and they have no idea what happened after that. Got it. All right. So let me ask you this. Do you accept that historians, when they prioritize sources, they normally prioritize earlier sources over later ones when prioritizing historical events, sources for historical events? For example, Do you think that a historian, if they're looking at the crucifixion narrative, they would give priority to the gospel accounts instead of the Quran, written 600 years later?
I mean, look, that's possible, probable, because
That's possible.
that's how.
That's what they do. I mean, it's not possible. Probably that's what they do. I'm just saying if you agree with it, is all.
No, but when they're doing this, they are also pointing out inconsistencies in these narratives. Early
Okay.
gospel narratives about the
I didn't
crucifixion,
ask that
death, crucifixion,
You agree
resurrection
that
are highly
when they were
consistent.
written within decades of the event carry more weight than those were written 600 years later? So do you think a first century source would carry more weight than a 7th century source?
Contemporary sources should carry the actual weight, not
Right.
post 70 AD development
So you
of
believe
the
that
idea.
in the first century sources are affirmed, that the first century sources do affirm the crucifixion of Jesus?
The contemporary sources don't.
The contemporary sources don't confirm that Jesus was crucified. The Gospels don't say that Jesus was crucified.
What about James? What about James?
It doesn't say that he was crucified. Marbarsian, Lucian of Samosata, all these guys, the Jewish Talmud, they don't say Jesus was crucified. Is that what you're
The
saying?
contemporary sources don't.
The contemporary sources what?
James, Peter, even Paul doesn't. There's only dogma in Paul's letters.
Let's get away from the shtick that James is a narrative. He's already been writing the letter based on the assumption that people already knew that Jesus was crucified. So
that's how you're assuming things to be.
This is an allegation that's been made, and it's easily.
The first ever written document by one of the contemporaries of Christ does not mention crucifixion.
Would you consider it satanic to teach something to somebody that causes them to lose their salvation? Would you consider that satanic?
Can you repeat that question again, please?
Yeah, sure. Would you consider it satanic for somebody to teach something that causes somebody to lose their salvation?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So if I was to teach, if Jesus' death on a cross, our salvation is contingent upon his death on a cross, and I was to be taught that or told that it did not happen, would you consider that satanic?
No, I would not, because I know the biblical history, the biblical teachings. Never was a sacrifice in contingent for salvation for anybody. Even during the First Temple period, those atonement sacrifices were not contingent for salvation.
How many years after Jesus was crucified was the Quran written?
I'm sorry, I missed your question. I'm sorry.
How many years after Jesus was crucified was the Quran written?
Well, Jesus wasn't really crucified, but to answer your question, after Jesus, like 600 years,
okay,
or you can say 590.
In that time span from the first century to the Quran, what source documents exist that you're aware of that say that Jesus was not crucified?
No, there may be none, which explicitly say that Jesus was not crucified. Quran may be the first one which would explicitly say that he was not crucified, okay? But absence of this information does not attest to the truth of certain information. For example, I could argue there are many epigraphical inscriptions of Allah being the God of the heavens and the earth, even before Islam, on the rock carvings and inscriptions on the rocks, and etc., etc. That does not make Allah the real God of the heavens and the earth just because there are inscriptions. So inscriptions and epigraphical writings, let alone writings in parchments, are any worthy evidence to consider for the truth of the matter. They are not. They just best explain the view of those people. That's all.
Okay, we're off topic a little bit. Can you name a single document between 30 AD to 1660 or 600 AD that, and I think I just asked this, do you know of any document that exists between 30 AD to 600 AD that denies that Jesus died on the cross? Are you aware of any document?
No, I'm not.
Okay. But it's the Christians who are full of conjecture, not somebody who wrote 600 years later.
I think the Christians don't even have a conjecture. The Christian group who believes in the death, resurrection, burial, and resurrection actually believe it based off the dogma. But the people who are in conjecture are the Jewish people, because they pulled out a lie from thin air out of their sleeve, that they in fact killed the Messiah. Okay,
Okay.
uh, which is where conjecture is. So
Does
some of the Jewish people who
Tacitus,
followed the Pharisees were made to believe that,
great.
and they weren't fully satisfied.
All right. Does Tacitus affirm that Jesus was crucified? Do you believe that he affirms that?
Yeah, but he does not provide any historical source or reference.
Okay. Was Tacitus a Christian?
He wasn't.
All right. Does Josephus affirm that Jesus was crucified in his writings?
I don't believe so. I believe that was an insertion into his accounts later on in the
Do
4th
you have
century.
any evidence for this, or is this something that you're making up?
Yeah, the scholars talk about this.
Which scholar?
The secular scholars talk about this. It's all over the internet.
I need a reference. I mean, you just can't.
Okay, we can just Google that. We can just Google that if you want.
I trust you, brother, but I don't trust you, brother. I mean, if you're gonna say, because you cited Eusebius, and I'm like,
this.
right? Eusebius ain't gonna.
Okay.
And
Okay. Here it says.
You can say. Here's what you can say. You can say that the affirmation that we have in the writings of Josephus were embellished. You can say that, and I agree with that. No problem at all. But the part that where Josephus talks about the crucifixion of Jesus, that's not an embellishment. He might be. You could say that he embellished. You could consider him a man or something like that. But you cannot deny the part about where it says that he affirms the crucifixion. So, was Josephus a Christian?
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
In 1972,
not a Christian. Josephus is not a Christian. How about Lucian of Samosata, who said that Jesus was crucified? Was he a Christian?
I'm not sure about him, but what is important to me is the early Christian records.
Hanged on a tree. Were they Christians?
No, what is important to me and what is my standard of what is an early attestation is from the Christian accounts, from the accounts of the disciples.
Was Pelagian a Christian?
No, I'm not sure. I don't go into reading about a lot about these people.
What about Celsus? Celsus, the philosopher in the 2nd century. Was he a Christian? None of these guys were Christians, but they're saying that Jesus was crucified. So what they're doing is they're providing a confirmation, an unbiased confirmation of an event that occurred in the 1st century. Would you agree with that?
See, I mean, what I'm saying is these people were not doing a serious biographical work on Jesus Christ or on early Christians. And you should know, Suetonius is one among the contemporaries of Tacitus. And he does not say anything, even though he writes about the Christian punishments under Nero. He doesn't say anything about crucifixion at all.
Well,
he's a contemporary of Tacitus.
He doesn't mention a lot.
Suetonius has nothing to say, right?
It doesn't mean that it's not true.
That's what I'm saying. Some of these people,
something earlier in here, because just because it's not mentioned doesn't mean it didn't happen.
I get your point. I get your point.
You're contradicting yourself.
All I'm saying is there is absence of information from early Christian sources such as James, Peter, and Paul himself, or Mary, the mother of Christ.
Okay, so who was crucified if it wasn't Jesus?
None. I mean, I don't think so. Anybody was crucified.
Nobody was
in
crucified.
relation to that. In relation to that event, I don't think so. There was a substitution theory.
The Romans didn't crucify anybody?
Of course, they were crucifying plenty of people whom they deemed as potential insurrectionists.
It's a far-fetched idea that Jesus wasn't crucified.
I mean, look, Jesus absolves himself from being the messianic figure. He says to Pontius Pilate, according to your own records, that I'm not the king and the kingdom is not mine. So why would Pontius Pilate go at length in releasing an insurrectionist such as Jesus the Barabbas, the messianic figure, during high traffic season, and crucify a pacifist leader? Why would he do that?
Am I looking at the wrong guy? Did Pilate let Jesus go? I didn't.
Jesus Barabbas. Jesus Barabbas. It's a different messianic figure.
If it wasn't Jesus being crucified, who was crucified instead? Who was crucified?
Nobody was crucified instead.
Nobody was Nobody
Yeah.
was crucified. I see. Okay. So what is the earliest source asserting this that you have, that nobody was crucified? Because all of my sources that are early, within decades of the cross, as a matter of fact, the one statement, the early church creed, is with 6 months of the cross, say that he was crucified. So what early attestation do you have that says that Jesus wasn't crucified?
The problem that I have is I don't have the early attestation by James or Peter or Paul. I don't have these early attestations, even by the disciples, not just Peter, not just Peter.
How can you say, I can't say Peter? Peter, even in the epistles that Peter wrote, he says that Jesus Christ was crucified. And in the epistles that Peter writes, he affirms the authority of Paul, 2 Peter 3.
That's dogma. That's dogma being included in the record.
Okay,
Yeah.
so sacred scripture.
It's not a biographical material. Even the other disciple who was privy to the court trials of Jesus Christ, other than Peter, even he's not named, he's not being identified, and there are no biographical material coming out of that person who was a direct eyewitness to the trials of Jesus Christ.
So Muhammad
Nothing, none.
said in 4157 that Jesus Christ was not. Where's Muhammad getting his information from?
From Almighty God.
He's getting it from God, the angel Gabriel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now is this the same source that told him that the sun sets in a muddy pool of water? Is that the same source? I'm asking. I don't know. I mean, is this the same? It's
the same source that tells.
He wrote the same source to a mosque.
Let me answer that question, Eric.
Or that.
Let me answer that question, Eric.
It's the same. Aaron built a golden calf with a Samaritan, a people group that didn't exist. That Mary is the sister of Aaron and the mother of Jesus. Is this all the same source? A God that How about Alexander the Great being a pious Muslim? The point I'm driving home here is that the Quran is wrong on so many historical.
Let me answer. You've asked me a question. Let me answer.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So does the sun set?
I have had a debate clarifying the lineage of Mary with William the Butcher Alrich on his channel. So watch the debate. It's available on my channel. Alexander the Great was he a Muslim? I don't think so. He was a Muslim technically by the definition, but was he graced by God as a king? Yes, of course he was graced by God as a king in the Quran.
Pagan as be. He was not.
Let me answer. Let me answer.
Whatever your answer is, it's not true. I mean, if it's anything close to being a Muslim, it's not true. He can't be. The guy, come on. See, this is what I'm talking about. How can you trust a book, a source that is wrong on just simple things like that? And then you try
you're assuming that the Quran is wrong on those accounts, but it may not be wrong. You just have to listen to alternative explanations.
Okay, guys, let's do this because we did hit the 15-minute mark. Eric, I want to give you the opportunity. Eric, I want to give you the opportunity, if you'd like to, one final question, and then Daniel gets the final.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
That was a lot of fun. Thank you, Daniel.
That flew by. I appreciate the stimulating nature of it. You guys are good sports, that's for sure. Okay, we're moving into our second cross exam here. 15 more minutes. Daniel, you get to lead the way. I'll reset the timer now. Go ahead.
Thank you, Donnie, and thank you, Eric. So my first question would be this, Eric. Could God have told the truth about what happened to Christ to a future prophet?
Could God have told who?
Could God have told the truth to a future prophet of what happened to Christ?
If it contradicts what happened in the past and what he said in the past, no.
I'm not asking that. I'm asking a very simple question. Could God have told the truth thereof to a future prophet?
Then I'm not understanding the question. The truth, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, we do have we do have Jesus teach us to expect a future spiritual teacher, a future prophet, according to 1 John chapter 4,
That's
a
when
future prophet, hang on, whom we can test whether the prophet is a true prophet or a false prophet. So Jesus Christ opens up the possibility of realizing a future prophet. In that situation, in that particular specific case, could God have told the truth of what happened to Christ to that specific prophet? Is there a possibility?
No, it's not, because I reject the premise of the question, because Jesus did not talk about the coming of a future prophet. So the premise of the question is incorrect.
That's a different debate. That's a different debate.
Well,
Okay.
I'm trying to answer the question as truthfully as I can.
Okay, that's fine. No problem. So your own historical method that you laid out, early attestation,
Right.
eyewitness testimonies, multiple attestations, hostile attestations, I tend to provide you answers to all of these historical method criterias. And one of those objections that I made was the earliest writings in Christianity was by James. And if crucifixion was like this soteriological theology, salvific doctrine that was super important, without which Christian faith would not exist. And if James is writing the first documents in the history of Christianity and he does not pay any attention to this, what does that tell you? Do you at least agree that the earliest attestation is not found?
I agree that the attestation of Christ's crucifixion is not in the Epistle of James. I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. So, eyewitness testimonies. Would you agree that the disciple, other than Peter, who was privy to the court trials of Jesus within the premises of Caiaphas or Ananias, or Annas or Caiaphas, both of these places where the trials of Jesus were conducted, a disciple other than Peter was present and he was not being identified, and there is no biographical or historical record from this particular specific disciple? Would you agree that the evidence is absent?
Okay, so which disciple would you be referring to? I'm confused. If you're saying it's not Peter,
There were two disciples in the court trials where Jesus was led by the Sanhedrin into the house of Annas and then into the house of Caiaphas.
some people believe
Peter was sitting outside, warming by the fire, denying Christ again and again up until the rooster crowed. And there was another disciple inside of those premises who was privy to the court trials of Jesus Christ, and he is not being identified. And there is no source information of any caliber from this disciple. Would you agree?
he's not being named by, he's not being identified by name, but we all have assumed, and the early church fathers attested this, that it was the Apostle John.
I'm not talking about the beloved disciple, as comes in the Gospel of John, written by the Johannine scribes. Johannine scribes, okay? And now look, even the Johannine scribes, the way they're writing down the resurrection narrative does not match up with the synoptic gospel writers. If that should be the case,
that's why they
if that should be the case, the gospel accounts are contradictory at best. Would you agree?
No.
How not? I mean, even the Passover is there's a days different in the Passover, and in the dynamic of how the crucifixion takes place, there is significant differences between the synoptic gospel writers and the Johannine gospel writers. Why wouldn't you see this as a contradiction?
Because they're not.
Then what is a contradiction? You got to teach me then the basics of what a contradiction is.
That A cannot be non-A at the same place at the same time. Okay, that's what a contradiction is.
Can Jesus be crucified? Can Jesus be led into trial on a Passover day or a day after Passover?
Well, it depends how you.
And that is not a contradiction.
Depends on how you describe the Passover day and which day that they're referring to. There's a lot of, and let me just answer this. Give me 15 seconds to answer this, okay?
Sure, go ahead.
I asked my family members to tell me what happened at my wedding 30 years ago. And when I asked my family members to tell me who was in my wedding, when it was, and all this, they all could give me spots and parts of it. But the fact of the matter is they all told me what my wedding day was, where I was, where I was married, who I married, and a couple other details. And all the other smaller details they didn't get right. Does that mean that my family members weren't at the wedding? No. And the same thing is true here. They had different emphases that they placed on what happened at the wedding, who was sitting here, who was sitting there, when this happened, when that happened. And this is what you find in the Gospels. And this is what people like yourself like to do. You like to sit there and poke little holes in the narrative. Well, he said there was only an angel here. He said that the angel was over here. Well, why can't he be right when he saw that an angel was over here, and he can't be right when he saw that the angel was over here?
Okay.
These contradictions that you talk about are easily reconcilable. But more importantly, this is the important thing.
You've taken more than 15 seconds.
They all lead back to the fact that Jesus was crucified. Period. Go ahead.
Okay, now look, Paul was in the seminary in Jerusalem when Jesus was preaching, and he was a student of Gamaliel. I don't know what his name is. I don't know how to pronounce it. I might be butchering that name. Forgive me for that.
Yes,
Gamaliel. Yeah. So Paul was very much present in Jerusalem. He was witness to all of the dynamic. He might have been privy to the contentions in the society between Christ and the Pharisees. All of that might be true.
I agree that he was. To be honest with you, I agree with you on that.
Okay, good, excellent. So the storyline after Jesus' arrest and what happened to him, and the narratives within the Jewish people of how they disposed of Jesus Christ. I'm sure Paul was privy to this information. There is no way you can tell me Paul wasn't privy to this information. There is no way. I'm not going to accept it. So a man who is privy to this information does not do a biographical work, but dares enough to claim that he was persecuting and killing early Christians. And he has got nothing whatsoever to say about his high priest, Jesus Christ. What happened to him, how he got disposed. He says nothing whatsoever, but he brags himself as killing early Christians. So what does that tell you? Is there absence of early attestation by Paul himself? Would you agree with me?
I have no idea what you're asking here. Paul was a persecutor of the early Christian church. I agree with that.
Okay. But how come he does not provide any historical or biographical material of how Jewish people disposed Christ? How come he does not provide any historical or biographical material, even though he was a witness to the contentions taking place in first century Judea?
What do you mean the disposure of Jesus Christ? I don't understand what you
mean. When he got arrested by the Jewish Sanhedrin and what they did with him, Paul has nothing to say. The gospel accounts do have something to say, but Paul has nothing to say.
About the passion of Christ? Or is that what you're talking about?
Except for dogma, he does not give you a biographical account or a historical account of what the Jewish Sanhedrin did with Jesus. He does not give you any account whatsoever. Does that tell you that there is a lack of early attestation? Yes or no?
No. No.
Come on, man. Come on. I mean, you're driving me crazy right now.
No. Why is it necessary for him to do that? Why is it necessary for him to rehash narratives that are already discussed in the gospel? His epistles aren't necessarily about rehashing the passion of the Christ.
So therefore, Eric, there is no early attestation of what really happened to Jesus Christ, and therefore there is no historicity to the fact that
6 months within the cross. If you're saying that 6 months after Jesus' crucifixion, that he was crucified is not early attestation. I don't know. Okay, fine. I'll have to give that to you. But I would think that 6 months after the crucifixion is pretty early attestation when you talk about a historical event 2,000 years ago. I don't know if you have anything to compare that to that gets you any closer to any other event, but 1 Corinthians 15 is a known Christian creed prior to the conversion of Paul that was being preached and being recited in Jerusalem, the very place where it could have been refuted. And it wasn't. It says that Jesus Christ was crucified and he was buried on the third day. It said that this is a creed. And if all somebody had to do was just say, no, that's not true, and then it would have got out that the Christian creed is not true, and it would not have made 1 Corinthians. But there it is.
The correspondences. Okay. I'll let you speak. Right. The correspondences between the Judeo-Christian early movement and the Greco-Roman world were very in a narrow band of channeling information. So what we can take out of this is the Greco-Roman world, when receiving these communications from Judeo-Christian world, there is all sorts of possibilities of how this material got played out and what got adulterated, fabricated, inserted, smuggled in. All of these possibilities exist because the Greco-Roman scribes, they were following Jesus Christ. They were fascinated by his preaching, and they became the important agents to transmit this information to the larger Greco-Roman world. And Greco-Roman world, in order to become receptive, these messages have to be channeled in to their cultural tradition. And that's exactly what happened. These letters could have been well altered later on and sort of depicted as the earliest references for you, like within 6 months, but could have easily been altered later on.
Well, why would these letters be altered later on when the Christians didn't even know that the letters would become part of the canon of the New Testament? Why change a letter that is just to an average Christian that is insignificant? I've heard this argument.
But the average Christians weren't really concerned.
The people at Hogwarts could go ahead and change these letters, and better put some kind of hex on them to keep
the average Christian. Eric, the average Christians weren't really concerned with these communications made to the Greco-Roman world and what Greco-Romans did with that literature. They weren't really concerned. They were with James the Just, their leader, and James the Just was guiding them. He was their guiding beacon. So they stuck to him. They got their doctrine from him. All right. So none of this was prevalent in the earliest times post Jesus's departure. All of this literature elaborations that came along, death, burial, and resurrection, really happened after post 70 AD. And this is where you feel the Greco-Roman have taken over.
You're going to have to cite sources for that. You just can't say that this happened without citing a source.
I'm telling you, the absence of earliest attestations is evidence good enough for you to work with.
You can't say that there's absence of early attestation when we have it.
You don't have it. You don't have it from Peter. You don't have it from Paul himself. You don't have it from James. You don't have it from the other disciples.
The New Testament was complete by the end of the 1st century. That includes all of the Johannian epistles, the Petrarian epistles, the Pauline epistles, the history of Acts, and all 4 Gospels, even the Apocrypha. All of them say that Jesus was crucified. I don't know where you're coming up with this idea that we can't say early attestation.
No, the early attestations have to be
early attestation.
Do you reckon?
Last question.
Do you reckon that James had written prior to Paul, and therefore his writings would be early attestations, and Paul's not early attestations?
Yeah,
would you agree?
Let me address the James writing prior to Paul. We're not entirely sure that James wrote prior to Paul, number one. Some people say he did.
He died before Paul. He was killed before Paul.
James, the brother of Jesus, was killed before Paul?
Yeah, I think
no,
so.
He wasn't. No, he wasn't. No, that's not true.
When was Paul killed?
Paul
65?
was 64 AD. 64 AD. James,
James
brother of
the
Jesus,
Just was
not-
killed around 48 or something like that. Or
you're talking about a different
something like
James. You're talking about James the Less. This isn't James, the brother of Jesus.
that. So
This
when
is-
was James the Just killed?
I'm not exactly sure, but it wasn't before Paul.
I think James the Just was killed 61 before Paul was killed. I think
Sure.
61 is the right date.
That might be
61 or
true.
62.
This isn't the brother of Jesus that we're talking about. This is somebody that.
No, this is the brother of Jesus. James the Just, the brother of Jesus, was killed around 62, I suppose.
Not the brother.
Okay, Eric gets the last word. We're a minute over. Go ahead, Eric. Take the
Okay,
last word.
well, I can't even remember what I was going to say. If I can't remember, I guess it couldn't have been all that important. But the
No
fact of the
worries.
matter
Thank
is
you.
that we do have early attestation, and the Pauline attestation that we do have is early, and it does say that Jesus Christ was crucified on a cross. So
It is not a biographical.
I don't know how you can get by
Not
that.
biographical in nature.
I would just like to know. Well, I'll bring it up in my closing. Never mind.
Okay, gentlemen. Fast-paced and stimulating cross-exam. That was a little bit over 30 minutes. It flew by. So good job, gentlemen. I appreciate you both being good sports, able to come in here and give us a debate to remember in the debate coliseum. So we got 5 minutes each for closing statements. Good opportunity in light of everything discussed so far, all the points brought up, to wrap up our thoughts, wrap up our points, address anything we feel has been left hanging up to that point, and essentially land the plane on our respective positions here tonight. Eric, of course, saying yes to the debate resolution, was Jesus crucified, and Daniel saying no. Eric, you get the first closing statement. I'll start the timer on your first word. Go ahead.
We get 5 minutes on these, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's be clear about this. What just happened in this debate? On one side, we have multiple first century sources. I cited 7 extra biblical sources, by the way. And on the other side of the debate, we have one single 7th century source that says that the sun sets in a muddy pool of water. I don't even think that's close. I don't know how you can believe an event with no attestation and then try to dismiss an event that has almost universal, complete, and early attestation. You have, within a few years of the event, you have Paul is already quoting the early creed. I cited in 1 Corinthians that Christ died, he was buried, and was raised. That tradition predates the Gospels themselves. It predates Paul's conversion. It predates the church councils, and it goes straight to the earliest followers of Jesus in the 1st century. It's literally within months of the cross. You have all 4 of the Gospels affirming the crucifixion. You have Tacitus, a hostile Roman source, affirming the crucifixion. You have Josephus, a Jewish historian, affirming the crucifixion. You have the Jewish Talmud, a hostile witness, affirming the crucifixion. All of these are early. All of this is multiple. All of these are all hostile. This is what we call the historical method. This is how history is done. These are the steps, sources, attributions that historical claims are made and how they are substantiated. Now compare that with the denial that we have in the Quran. It was written 600 years later, no eyewitnesses, no historical data, no name substitute. That, what happened? Well, we don't know what happened, but we just know that didn't happen. No preserved 1st century alternative tradition existing, just historical assertion based on accommodating the ideas, and I didn't even bring this up, but of the 2nd greatest treatise of system. This is where Muhammad got it. I mean, let's just be real about this and be clear about this. That's where Muhammad got his source, is from the 2nd great treatise of Seth. He was just regurgitating stories that he heard from around him. This one error is, this is a determining factor in the eternal destination of your soul, folks. And this is why it's so important to understand what is fact and what is not. Your soul is dependent upon it. This buffoonery that is being passed off as theology is not only dangerous, it's satanic is what it does. This is exactly what Satan would want you to do. We love all these things about Jesus. Jesus is a miracle. Jesus virgin born. He did all this. He did. But that one thing that saves your soul from an eternity in hell, well, that didn't happen. That's exactly something Satan would do. If we applied this method anywhere else in history, think about this. It would collapse immediately. Imagine rejecting Julius Caesar's assassination because it was written in a text in the 7th century and said, well, it only appeared so that he was stabbed. You know, what would happen to Shakespeare? What is that? Etute brute? Is that how he said it in Latin, whatever it is? Imagine if people said that it only appeared that Muhammad suffered a humiliated death, consistent to one that he talked about, that he would suffer if he was a false prophet. God forbid. You would mock them, and you would have every right to do so. The crucifixion wasn't a flattering invention. It was shameful. It was humiliating. It was the death of a failed messianic figure, and yet exactly that is what the earliest Christians proclaimed publicly in Jerusalem, what I've said it before, in the very place where it could have been disproven. This isn't a first century source denying it. We don't have one first century source denying this, not one. All we have is the sayings of Muhammad written 600 years after the fact in a book that is littered like a junkyard full of historical errors. So to deny that this is an alternative to historical theory is a rejection of the historical method itself. Well, we can't know anything from history if we can't know that Jesus died on the cross. This one event is exactly what separates Christianity from Islam, and Islam gets it dead wrong, eternally wrong. I'm sorry, I need a couple more seconds here. So this was a historical event. It's the most demonstrable, documented historical event from antiquity. And to deny it is a lie, and a lie from a pit of hell. Thank you.
Eric, thank you very much for that 5-minute concluding statement to the audience. We've got 5 more minutes left because we have Daniel's closing statement, which means you have 5 more minutes to send in your questions, challenges, which I'm all caught up on. I appreciate the interaction, the lively interaction from our live chat. I've also bumped super chats to the top to guarantee for guaranteed reading here tonight, as long as they are, of course, cordial and respectful to our guests. Okay, Daniel, I've reset the timer and I'm starting it now. You got 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I would want to debate with you on the sun setting in the murky pool entirely as a different debate. Maybe you're obsessed with this absurdity that you have misunderstood what that verse means. I'm offering you the opportunity to debate that exact verse with me in a completely different debate, okay? Having said that, the earliest Christians, including the disciples and the earliest scribes who were with these disciples, like the Johannine scribes, they warn early Christians of the capacity of some people to come in the sheep's clothes, wolves coming into sheep's clothes and fabricating scriptures. We have this clear warning from Johannine scribes. They're warning you to be aware of those who corrupt the scriptures, fabricate the scriptures. So for you to assume 1 Corinthians hasn't been fabricated, it's a far-fetched idea for me. Okay, when you have the disciples and their scribes warning Christians that fabrication was occurring and taking place, was real phenomenon, for you to go and consider 1 Corinthians was not fabricated is a far-fetched idea for me. All right, while we know there is huge buffoonery being done and orchestrated within the gospel accounts with the death, burial, and resurrection, the innumerable inconsistencies are evidence of this buffoonery that's taken place in the first century. And this alone is testimony that the words that Almighty God gave Prophet Muhammad was indeed a miracle. He could have gotten deceived and deluded to confirm one of these doctrines floating around amongst the Christians. He could have taken a position with one of these legends But to give an outright denial tells you what? Informs you that the Bible was never, never, ever for atonement through a sacrifice. The atonement, Yom Kippur, was never a soteriological theology, doctrine. It was never. It was not meant for salvific doctrine. Atonements were never meant for salvific doctrine in the teachings of the Bible, the entirety of the Old Testament and the prophets. In fact, repentance was. You repent and you attain salvation. Never atonement sacrifices. Atonement sacrifices were not salvific. As such, there was never a criteria needed for a man to give up his life to save the sins of plenty. It was never a biblical criteria or a requirement. So Prophet Muhammad's dictations are divinely inspired. They attest the basic fundamental creed and the doctrine of the entirety of the Bible. Okay? But what you come up is those buffooneries, elaborations that have really happened post 70 AD, and that's where you want to assume salvific doctrine originates, which is not the case. The earliest attestations, James, Peter, Paul, don't talk about this in a biographical way. There is no historicity to this. The earliest secular scholars, Tacitus, he's not writing biographical material in Christ. Heaven's sake, he was not writing a biography of Jesus Christ. Josephus, he was not writing a biography of Jesus Christ. So none of these people were seriously investigating and researching information. That's my point. These secular scholars did not research it, even though they had access to the Roman administrative records, the court logs in first century Judea. They didn't access it. Josephus could have accessed it, Tacitus could have accessed it, and even Suetonius, he doesn't even mention it. And these were not even contemporary historians. So there is no historicity to the event of Jesus' crucifixion, especially in the light of the legendary development in the gospel accounts that are inconsistent within the synoptic core. They're inconsistent, let alone with agreeing with any credulity with the Johannine laying out of the death, burial, and resurrection. Highly inconsistent. None of this is historicity. None of this is historical or a biographical material or any material from the transcripts of those trials. None of this can be reckoned as worthy historical accounts. These are legendary elaborations. And the Quran is spot on. It just says he was not crucified, he wasn't killed. Spot on. And now you need faith to believe that he was raised up to God. And that faith is not in Bard Ehrman. He's not the go-to guy. Bard Ehrman-like people, they find a way out, an exit for Jesus, a historical Jesus, and that exit has to be in some form of death. And it is nicer to assume the tradition of the Judeo-Christian elaboration for Bard Ehrman, right? I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed. So the truth of the Quran manifests time and again in a glorious way. Your misunderstandings of the Quran, they're not worth it. And I would want to debate every one of the misunderstandings that you have in relation to the Quran. I want to debate with you, and if you're willing for that. So thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you for those closing statements, Eric and Daniel. That concludes openings, rebuttals, a fast-paced and fun cross-exam. I enjoyed that. In closing statements, we're moving into audience questions. And before we get into our first question, I am going to give our guests just a minute or two break to go over some reminders and announcements. We are going to be ending the month strong. We still have quite a bit before March ends. We're trying to give you another epic year of debates on all sorts of topics: soteriology, nature of God, end times theology, creation, evolution. We got a good mix coming at you so far. So what we have this week, lots to look forward to. We got this one coming up midweek. Can a believer lose his salvation? Looking forward to this debate. Caleb Percher and Patrick Urish. We have this one this week as well. Mosh and Dr. Anthony Aquino. 70 AD return, true or false? A debate on full preterism. I will be continuing my series with Dr. Dino tomorrow. We're on episode 9 of Genesis Revealed. So we just finished the first season or saga of this series. which will now be compiled into a DVD series. And so we will keep you guys posted on that. Episode 8 was Dinosaurs and the Bible. Tons of fun. We also touch on in the Q&A section of these episodes other topics related to end time theology, soteriology, and more. You can find all 8 episodes on Patreon, and you can gain access to them for as little as $1 a month if you become a ministry partner. So tomorrow will be episode 9. Dr. Dino and I will be recording the first of the next saga. First episode will be Cosmic and Stellar Evolution. So that should be fun. On our Facebook page, if you're not yet following us on Facebook, we actually just hit 81,000 followers. So this thumbnail is a bit old, needs to be updated, but the mission continues. We've had a goal to expand in 2026 across platforms, and you can find a ton of novel content on Facebook in terms of reels and videos that you won't find anywhere else. If you haven't yet seen our program from last week, truly fascinating program with Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson from Answers in Genesis, a Harvard grad, PhD cell biologist. We discussed his work, his ongoing research project, Confirmed Predictions, Tracing Humanity's True Origins. This program might just blow your mind. I also had a lot of fun with Dr. J.L. Weil, a nuclear chemist. Just the other day, we did a program on creation versus evolution, where Dr. J gave another excellent talk. And then we engaged criticisms and objections to arguments regarding C14 in dinosaur fossils, dinosaur soft tissue. Dr. J is an encyclopedia worth of information. So if you haven't yet seen this program, do please check it out. We got this one coming up as well at the beginning of April, which I'm pumped for. Dr. Al Garza and Luke Jones debating the deity of Christ, specifically divinity in the synoptics. We just had on Friday, Dr. Al Garza and Otis Lewis for a debate on the question, is God one or three divine persons? You can find that in the live stream section if you haven't yet seen it. If you like debates on the Trinity, we've got this one coming up in a couple months, one of our main events here. Dr. George Antonios and Dr. Dustin Smith, is the doctrine of the Trinity taught in the Bible? Okay, guys, that's just a snapshot of the overall material that we have for you coming up. And Eric, Daniel, let's...
Hey, Donnie, I just wanted to add one thing about your Dr. Dino thing.
Sure.
Hovind. He has I was in one of his videos.
Really?
The dinosaurs. Yeah, absolutely. Dinosaurs in the Bible. When I was deployed to Iraq, I had the opportunity to go to Babylon and get some pictures of the actual pictures of the Ishtar Gate and some of those dinosaurs that he says existed at the time of Nebuchadnezzar that are in the relief of those ruins.
Right.
And I sent them to him, and I made his video. I felt like I was famous for about 6.5 seconds.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So that would have been in his. So is that probably in his DVD series here? Is Dinosaurs in the Bible one?
Yeah, it would be.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to look out for that then. I'm gonna have to go watch.
I'm standing there on. It's like 150 degrees outside, and I'm talking about how the dirt is hot. He makes some comment about that, but anyway, yeah, I got to meet him when I went to Florida before he went to prison. Anyway,
was that a good meeting?
It was brief. It was
good, yeah,
just
small world, man. Small world.
He's a great guy. He really is.
Yeah, well, he's been we've been partnered on things for years. I've moderated probably about 150 of his debates, so we've had some fun. Wow. Yeah, we've had some fun over the years. We've had an ongoing evolution debate challenge series for the last 3 to 4 years, a challenge to anybody who believes they're related to whales, pine trees, and banana plants to step up and debate. So we've had many step up, and we've had many debates. So, well, that's cool, Eric. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that video and look out for you. Okay, well, very cool. Let's jump into some of these questions. Again, Eric and Daniel, I appreciate you guys giving your time for tonight, but not just for tonight, the time leading up to it. I know it requires a lot of study and prep for these debates. Here we go. Toronto Bible Study, $5 super chat. I appreciate the support and question. Looks like it's for Daniel, I'm assuming. How do you identify what Allah revealed in the gospel if you dismiss the gospel's central claim that Jesus was crucified, Daniel?
Yeah, actually, thank you for that question. In fact, what is the central claim of the gospel? The central claim of the gospel is the very teachings that Jesus issued out of his own mouth. That's central to gospel. So any other narrative that's part of the gospel which Jesus did not verbalize cannot become central to the gospel. So gospel is the dictation, teachings that Jesus, when he was sent by Almighty God to the people, that God gave him that. The Spirit that was with Jesus was imparting these teachings to Jesus Christ, and those teachings were verbalized on the mouth, on the lips of Jesus Christ himself. They are the central core. They are the tenets of the gospel, not the resurrection narrative that comes out of the lips of later people. Okay, that cannot be central to the gospel. So you should get this right in the brain. What is a gospel? Gospels are teachings of Jesus Christ. So therefore, his teachings are central. Any attestation not taught by Jesus' own lips cannot therefore become central. Thank you.
Okay, I was just on mute. Eric, floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that this is the equivalent of saying that the Man of La Mancha is an actual historical book. And to say that Allah revealed anything in the gospel is simply incorrect. What was revealed in the Quran was revealed by Muhammad and had nothing to do with God himself. As I said earlier in the debate, that the Quran is a historical mess and is easily demonstrated to be false, not only on the crucifixion, which is the most important event of all of these, but also on a plethora of other things that I did bring up, to include the sun setting in a muddy pool of water.
Eric, thank you. Dean, you get the last word. Question was for you.
Yeah, I'm not impressed with what Eric says here, even though I think I made my point conveniently that there are no early attestations, and he keeps insisting that there are. The fact that atonement was never biblical, soteriology, should tell you everything you need to know. Everything. Only repentance is vital or central to soteriology in the Bible. Only repentance. So atonement was never soteriological doctrine. Never. To become one during first century. Never. So thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next one now. This comes in from the Super Holy Fire, $2 super chat. Thank you for the support. Question for Daniel. You quoted 1 John. What about 1 John 2, verse 2?
Just give me a time. I'm just going to open 1 John.
Yeah, feel free to pull it up.
One John 2:2. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling. Dogma that's written in the scriptures becomes dear to the believers because they are bred in that dogma. If you're being told from the earliest stages of your life that this is the whole purpose of Jesus Christ and this is what you have to believe, then you would be believing that and would be finding it difficult to relate to Jesus Christ in any other way. You would find it difficult. But right now, what you have to do is go through this process of dissonance and read the Gospels for what they are. If you read the Gospels, it'll become crystal clear to you that Jesus was clearly expecting you to perform better than the Pharisees and not just rely on this atonement sacrifice that is going to give you salvation, which is not the case. Okay? So you might have to think about your faith all over again in a new way. So I would encourage you to do that.
Eric, floor is yours.
Sure. Yeah. So if you're going to say that this is something that we've been taught all of our lives, the reason why we've been taught this all our lives is because this is what it says. And this is what the earliest adaptation says. And we don't need somebody coming 600 years after this was written by the actual eyewitnesses to tell us that none of this happened. That is a lie. And so when he's talking about Jesus dying as propitiating for our sins, he's citing an actual event that everybody knows occurred, with the exception of Muhammad, who was writing 600 years and making it up as he went. There's no, also, let me add this. There's no documentation that Daniel has cited this evening that says that Jesus did not die on a cross, period, other than the Quran. Trust me, bro. Sorry, I can't.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
Daniel, you get the last word. Go ahead.
Yeah, you don't have to trust me. All you have to do is become, critical of the literature that you find in the gospel accounts about death, burial, and resurrection. If you read that from the critical eye view, you will find the new innumerable inconsistencies will only tell you one thing, that it was manufactured. And if it was manufactured, there was never a place for such doctrine in the Bible. Jesus did not teach it. He didn't actively teach it. In fact, he teaches you to invest your efforts, your works in a wise way. If you did not invest your efforts in a wise way, then you might as well be destined to hellfire, in the parable of the 10 minas that we get to see. So Jesus has given you teachings that you have to walk the way better than the Pharisees did to uphold the glory of God's kingdom. If you failed, then you fail. You will be condemned to hell. And that's why on Judgment Day, he's going to separate the goats from the sheep and not give you a blanket soteriology through his crucifixion. That was never a thing, and it is not a determinism that has happened, and it's futile to believe in that.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Next one comes in from Toronto Bible Study. He's got a follow-up $5 super chat. Thank you very much for the support and question for tonight's debate. I'm assuming it's for you, Daniel. If only Jesus's words are authoritative, then do you accept Jesus's own predictions of being killed / crucified?
Yeah, there you go. Again, you want to cherry pick those verses from the gospel accounts which kind of align to your beliefs and doctrines, but you want to ignore the bulk material out there which directly contradicts this. Okay, in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus prays to Almighty God, he doesn't even know what that difficult cup is going to be. Okay, if this crucifixion and atonement was all prearranged, and Jesus somehow knew this, being God himself, he should have known it, then all of those events leading up to crucifixion, submitting to God's will, not mine, your will be done, and take away this difficult cup from me, all of this language, all of these instances that we find go to waste. Why should I, as a sincere believer, ignore these developments that happen in Jesus' life? Why should I ignore it? I cannot possibly ignore this. So Jesus never predicted his death, as stated in some of the passages, which is a fabrication. Because if he had, then there was no need for him to fall down in the Garden of Gethsemane and pray to God, not knowing what would happen to him. So you got to have a critical read into the gospel accounts. Believe me, you got to. Thank you.
Eric, over to you.
Well, I don't even know what that was a response to be honest with you. But if you're going to quote Jesus, you quote Jesus in Quran 7:157, where Muhammad says that you would find me what you have between your hands, Banu Yudehi. And what they had between their hands in the 7th century is exactly what we have in our hands today. And the reason why we know this is because the Sinaiticus and the Vaticanus, which they clear back to around 325, 350, say that Jesus died on a cross in first century Jerusalem. So even Muhammad is affirming what the Gospels teaching or teach without even, because the guy couldn't read and he was making it up on the fly anyway. But he's even affirming what is in them. So if you're not accepting with the words of Jesus, even when Muhammad affirms them, why would we expect Daniel to accept the words of Jesus, reading them straight out of the gospel that his own prophet affirms exist? So it doesn't make any sense to me.
Daniel, you can have the quick final word. Go ahead.
Well, if you want to have a win against me using the medieval lollies and candies that Sam Shimon is fan of, and God Logic is fan of, misinterpreting every phraseology of the Quran, then you will not be able to win against me. All right. So Baina Yadehi does not really mean what you just sort of articulated here.
Yes, it does.
So you might have to re-understand the Quran for what it is, and not really blindly be led by people like Shimon and God Logic. You will not get anywhere.
Jai
Okay,
is a very Jai is a Christian apologist that has gone through this until the cows come home, and I promise you, he knows Arabic probably better than anybody that you could imagine. And he says it says what I just said it is between your hands.
I'm going to give a shout out to everybody, including God Logic, who wants to debate me about Baina Yadehi, what it means. I'm going to give a shout out to anybody and everybody. I'm here wanting to debate anybody and everybody on these important
aspects, as you did here when debating whether Christ was crucified or not, because you provided no evidence for your position.
Okay, we got a follow-up from Toronto Bible Study. He's coming at you, Daniel. $5 super chat. I appreciate the support. He says, if appealing to Jesus's own words is cherry picking, then why did you say Jesus's teachings are the gospel in Quran 5:47?
Look, Jesus's teachings are replete in the gospel accounts. All of them are based off not the grace model that you want so much to be, but they are based off the works model. They are based off the obedience model, discipline model, and following the teachings model and the commandments model. Okay, none of your wild assumptions about the grace model, atonement, death, burial, and resurrection. None of those were taught by Jesus Christ. None of that is true. In fact, what is true is for you difficult to follow. For you, it becomes immediately difficult to follow. So you want to go with Paul, who sort of gets done with the law and says we live in grace, and you find comfort in doing that. And if you have found comfort in doing that, how do you reckon on earth you will ever summon courage to come and deal with the teachings of Jesus Christ that are found in the Gospels, and read and understand his parables and implement them in your lives and improve your lives? When will you do that? You won't, because your mind is already sold out to a grace model, and you will never be able to find teachings of Jesus Christ that encourage you to live a life for the glory of God's kingdom. You will never do that.
The floor is yours, Eric.
Yeah, cherry picking. Jesus clearly says that he was going to be crucified. Jesus clearly said that he would rise from the dead. Jesus clearly forgave sins. Jesus clearly said that he was the Son of God. All of these things this is not cherry picking. This is citing the words of Jesus. And then he mentioned Paul, of all things, saying Paul's not legitimate. If you go to the Sirah, I mean, look at the Sirah. You go to page 653, and it says, those whom Jesus, son of Mary, sent, both disciples and those who came after him in the land were Peter and the disciple Paul with him. So even your Sirah is saying that Paul was a legitimate disciple. So you can go ahead and sit there and say that Jesus is cherry picking. Everybody can clearly see through it, and they can also see through your own sources when you try to diminish the authority of Paul, because it's right here in your own books.
I'm not a fan of human work. I rely myself to the words of God. The words of God are my authority, and not any man's work. People can do blunders, mistakes, unintentional, intentional, motivated, unmotivated. All possibilities exist. So therefore, I discipline myself at the words of God. So that's important to me.
Okay. Looks like we're having a mini Toronto Bible study versus Daniel debate here. He's got another follow-up.
Is anybody going to ask me a question?
I know. Unfortunately, you're being left out of all the fun, Eric. If anyone's got any questions.
I do want to know is I want to know what you guys think of my Iowa Hawkeyes who won last night against Florida. I mean, that was cold hard, shooting it right in their face at the buzzer. Now, come on.
Well, you know what? Poor Daniel, you know, he's in the hot seat, and also poor Eric. He wants some questions and challenges at him too. So feel free to send those in. Okay. TBS, $5 super chat. Thank you very much. Jesus said he will be crucified in the gospel. You said Jesus's teachings are the Injil in Quran 547. You are dodging my questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Toronto. I'm not dodging your questions. What is Injil becomes super important. Injil, no doubt, is found in the gospel accounts, synoptics plus John, and plus passages from parts of Revelation, parts of the epistles of Peter. They're found there. Okay, but mainly concentrated in the gospel accounts, synoptics plus John, right? Now, when the gospel writers are writing, they're also writing annotations of their own into these records. So one has to be careful. And also, these gospel manuscripts were subject to later fabrication. Okay, there's thick evidence of that. But now, when you're reading, we have to select the speech of Jesus Christ that's in line to the overall message that's being narrated in the gospel accounts. Mainly, I would ask you to do this. Go to the parables in the synoptic gospels. Pull out each of those parables, just those parables, and study for what they are. And come back and tell me what you're telling me right now. Just study the parables. Make this as an exercise of your life. Just pull out the parables of Jesus in the synoptic gospels and study them and come back and tell me what you want to tell me.
Eric, over to you.
Jesus took the 12 aside and told them, we are going up to Jerusalem, and everything that is written by the prophets about the Son of a Man will be fulfilled. He will be delivered over to the Gentiles. They will mock him, insult him, spit on him, and they will flog him, and they will kill him. Mark, it says, for he was teaching his disciples and telling them the Son of Man is to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him. And when he has been killed, he will rise 3 days later. These are Jesus's words. I don't know how you can deny Jesus's words saying that he was going to be killed, and to say that that it's somehow, I don't know what the word remember the word you said, is conjecture or some type of cherry picking. There you go, cherry picking. This is not cherry picking. These are clearly passages where Christ clearly says that he will be killed. He also says they will mock him, spit on him, scourge him, and kill him. After 3 days he will rise from the dead. All of these things, Jesus is predicting himself. This is not cherry picking. This is simply citing the early not the 6th century, the early 1st century attestation. This is how.
What is the reference that you read that from? What is the reference?
The reference was, let me pull it back up here. Luke 18:31 and Mark 9:31. Okay,
now look what we have. Now look as the last word. Now look what we have in Luke 22. Okay,
Luke
what we have is this. Even at the Passover,
is that Luke 9:22 you're saying, or
Luke 22:6? Luke 22. I'm not sure. Okay, Luke 22 Luke 22 verses 36 onwards. Okay. Look what we have here. Jesus says, even at the Passover meal, Jesus is insisting them, all prophetic prophecies are about to be fulfilled. Okay? And what does that mean? Does that mean crucifixion? Hell no. No. That was not what Jesus meant. And Jesus is saying, about to be fulfilled, all Old Testament prophecies, what are they? Messianic in nature. That the Messiah would come and God the Father would go ahead of him and defeat the enemies of the Messiah and make the enemies his footstool. Okay? These are the Messianic prophecies. All of these prophecies are going to get fulfilled, Jesus says, during Passover. And he says, therefore, orders them to assemble the military gear, even if they have to sell their own cloaks and buy a sword. He says, go and do it. It's not crucifixion. Come on, man, give me a break. Give me a break. It's not crucifixion.
Well, Daniel, just to make sure Toronto Bible Study gets the fullness of his question answered. For example, a couple of the verses that Eric brought forth, what are your thoughts on those? And then specifically Mark 8:31, I think it is, where he says, and he began to teach them, and that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected of the elders and of the chief priests and scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again.
Yeah, I mean, all that suffering, for sure, Jesus would have spoken, and it was very consistent with the biblical tradition that the prophets would suffer when they do a prophetic work. In ancient Israel, all prophets have suffered. Even Moses has suffered to a certain degree, although he was acknowledged as a prophet of God. But Jeremiah clearly was killed. Several of them were killed. Several of them rebuked heavily. So Jesus, when he says that he will be suffering, that is true.
Killed, but I'm curious as the killed text where he says,
yeah, the killed. These are the ones that are insertions into the gospel accounts. Okay.
Are you saying that the final part of verse 31, and scribes and be killed and after 3 days rise again? You're saying that that's not supposed to be there?
Yeah.
Really?
Okay. He just said that these are insertions.
Eric, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
I'm sorry. That's simply not true. If these are insertions into the Gospels, it is incumbent upon Daniel to provide the manuscript of where it has, or where we have this statement of Christ saying that he's going to be crucified, and the manuscript that is dated earlier than it, that says that he won't, or it's not there. It's his response. This is the same thing as citing a document that says the sun sets in the muddy pool of water 600 years later as a source document on the historicity of the crucifixion. You just can't simply make it up like Muhammad did and think people are going to believe you and treat you as your testimony as credible. You would get sifted, just like Peter would, by Satan like wheat in front of anybody with any inkling on how to do cross-examination. You can't. Can you cite a source for what you just said, that this was an insertion?
I'd be curious too, because I just looked it up. I'm not seeing anything that says it's inserted.
It doesn't exist.
Do you have a source or citation for that?
I can't find anything. It doesn't exist.
No, the source is the other synoptics and John, who do not narrate the exact words.
So are you saying there is no external source or scholarship behind the idea that, so are you saying, just out of curiosity, I find this very interesting, are you saying where it says, and he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, because you were explaining that, and be rejected of the elders and the chief priests and scribes, all of that is legit, but just that final part, and be killed, and after 3 days, you're saying that part was just randomly inserted? Or
because that's how it was interpreted. All the suffering that he had to suffer was interpreted through the narrative, through the lens of his crucifixion. So when you interpret that, you end up annotating the text. So this is the annotated version. The initial version would have been the speech that came out of Jesus would have been, I would be suffering a great deal, but then the annotated text says killed and raised after 3 days.
I'm curious, the original text that would have left that out, does that exist? Because from my understanding on textual criticism, we do debates, for example, on 1 1 John 5, I think it is. With
5,
the
7. 1 John 5:7.
right, 1 John 5:7. We'll have debates between scholars on whether or not that's authentic, or the ending of Mark, for example. And so one side will show, hey, here's the evidence that shows where it's not there, and then here's where we see it's there. And so they debate those issues. But do you have any evidence where, hey, here's this piece where it's not there, here's the one where it's there, now we're going to debate whether it should be, Daniel?
Obviously, it'll be a far-fetched idea to claim that I have the evidence thereof from the manuscripts, because I think even scholars who research this particular field, they don't even get hold of the Q source, for example, the Q, which Mark refers to write his gospel. So this earliest material that was written or preached may not even exist. So that's the challenge.
Well, wouldn't that
And
be an
it's
argument from silence, though?
out
Because
of the way and prove.
and wouldn't that be an argument from silence? Because again, I've hosted and moderated many debates where we're debating texts like the woman caught in adultery, the famous Trinitarian text, 1 John 5:7, ending of Mark, where both sides are like, okay, here's the textual evidence, here's the manuscript evidence, here's some manuscripts that don't have it, here's some manuscripts that have. But with this one, as far as I can tell, there's no manuscripts that could be presented that shows that last little part where Jesus says he's going to be killed and then rise again. I don't see any manuscript evidence that suggests that that's not supposed to be there,
But-
Daniel.
but
I'm
we
curious
do
as to
have-
your thoughts.
But we do have manuscript evidence where annotations are taking place. The most famous one, if you want to see, is between the Synoptic Gospels, where Matthew sort of deviates to preserve Christology in the account of the story where a man comes inquiring to him, "O good teacher, what shall I do?" Where Matthew sort of modifies that and says, to preserve Christology, he says, "What good thing shall I do?" instead of "O good teacher," where Jesus provides a rebuke. "Why do you call me good? There's none but God alone is good." So we do have evidence of the scripture being meddled with and annotated. And when I'm looking into this particular passage where he gets killed and raises 3 days later, I don't see any precursor requirement to this doctrine being preached in the entirety of the Bible or in the Synoptic Gospels, where the Synoptic Gospel writers feel the similar need to punch in this detail. Therefore, it
Isn't
can
that
be
same? Isn't that same teaching found in Matthew, verse 16:21? So we have another where he says the same. He's going to suffer, be killed, raise again the third day. So are you saying that was also inserted then, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean the idea of 3-day resurrection 3 days later is an insertion into the gospel. Even the idea that develops somehow with the sign of Jonah. In the Mark's gospel, it's just the sign of Jonah, and then the theme develops as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale. So we see this doctrine being developed in the gospel accounts. So it becomes very clear that these were insertions or annotations provided by later people who
Is that
interpreted.
clear though, Daniel? I want to get Eric involved in this too. Eric, let's throw it to you. What are your thoughts on this back and forth exchange?
How do you even debate somebody like this? I mean, how do you carry on a coherent academic conversation when one side completely makes up their own facts, that these are insertions, and and in doing so, he's asked to provide the evidence for these insertions that he's citing, that Jesus was not crucified, and he doesn't. The only thing he does is says, "Well, this is this is nothing. This has nothing to do with interpretation. Has nothing to do with translation. We have the manuscripts that say we do not have an earlier manuscript that says Jesus did not die on the cross. All of the manuscripts say that all of the first century early attestation manuscripts say that Jesus did die on the cross. He has nothing. And when he says that they were insertions, then the responsibility is, it's incumbent upon him to provide the source for his assertion. He's making it up in order to support a document that was written 600 years later by a man who is a known liar. Muhammad lied. I mean, if you look at all of the lies that we see in the Quran, I'm sorry if this is offensive, Daniel, but this is exactly what I think he was. He was a liar. He makes so many historical errors in the Quran. He has no credibility. And then when you confront him on this specific one, where we have a mountain of evidence demonstrating that he was crucified, Daniel says, "Oh, well, they're insertions." No, they're not. If they are, you need to prove it. You cannot just make it up as you go and thinking that people are going to buy it.
Daniel, any thoughts on that?
Well, the evidence is right there. We will have to deal with it in a effective manner and academic manner. Once I notice annotations being done in the gospel accounts, how do you reckon I would be treating the gospel accounts in terms of credibility? Obviously, the credibility will plummet. So, in one simple inquiry where a man comes and asks Jesus, "O good teacher, what good thing shall I do um, uh, to attain salvation?" And this simple inquiry of this individual, which was, by the way, hearsay and eyewitnesses, both of these faculties are engaged. And three of the synoptic gospels, Mark and Luke, get it right, but
Yeah, but Daniel,
Matthew.
I do got to jump in on that one, because the variation in the rich young ruler account across Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that's simply from the fact that these are different perspectives of the authors, the audience, the narrative focus. And that's not I don't think that's equivalent to what you're saying here, that when we look at texts like in Matthew, in Luke,
but there's a clear intent
that these
to
are just
preserve
completely
authority.
removed. I mean, one might say that's an extrapolation fallacy.
That's exactly my point. He's saying I'm not even going to bother arguing this thing about the rich ruler. That this is a red herring that he's throwing out there. You cannot say, again, let me reemphasize, you cannot say that these are insertions into the gospel message unless you are able to cite the specific manuscript that existed prior to this first century document that says that Jesus Christ was not crucified. You have not done it all night. All night. I just need you to cite one. That's all. Other than the Quran written 600 years later, 800 miles away by an illiterate man who, let's just leave it at that.
And to be fair, Daniel, I'm going to give you the last word, Daniel, to be fair, because you've been gracious by answering these questions and engaging my clarifying questions as well. I just find it to be a very interesting point of view. So for the last word, if you could address Eric's question, that is there a single citation or source that you can call upon, kind of like in a science debate. If I make a claim or put forth an argument, endogenous retroviruses are functional, I can provide a dozen technical papers from the conventional literature showing and backing up my claim. So maybe as a last word, can you provide a citation, manuscript evidence, something from the world of textual criticism that basically shows, hey, we can consider this a serious argument that these words here were removed, the killed aspect of it, but then where he suffered, those are legit.
Look, all of these literate scholars of Christianity, early Christianity, they were not capable of providing a coherent narrative. All of this
I just feel like your dog, because we do have more questions. We got to move on. Like, if you don't have a site, maybe we can save that for another debate. It's like if somebody asked me if I were to make an argument in favor of creation, do you have a citation or a paper to support that? I'd say, yes, here it is. Let's move on. So if you don't, that's fine. If you can just say, no, you don't have one, and we can save it for another debate. I understand you're going to try and go and work around and say, well, here's why I don't have, but it's just a legit question. Do you have a source?
No, I don't think I have a Gospel of Mark, an antecedent to what we have right now, the version that we have right now. I don't think so. I have it.
Okay,
I don't think so. Any scholars have it.
Yeah. Okay, Dan.
Yeah.
So have we addressed this one? Toronto Bible Study, $5 super chat, Quran 547. This might be a follow-up. Let's see. Commands the people of the gospel to judge by what Allah revealed. Now, this looks new. Appreciate the super chat. How could they determine what is true or not by your standard, Daniel?
Yeah, that particular verse is not judging doctrine, it's judging the disputes of people and applying legislation that deals with social legislative norms of those people. So this is not doctrinal, this is legislative, social, um, dispute level judgments. So you should not get confused between the two. I know the confusion prevails because people like God Logic and Inspiring Philosophy and those who are debating Islamic dilemma, they think the meaning of this verse is also inclusive of doctrinal judgments. No, it is not.
Thank you, Daniel. Eric, floor is yours.
I don't even know what to say anymore. I mean, it tells you, even your own Quran says, for us to go judge by what we have in our hands to determine whether or not it's true or not. And when we look at it and we determine, yeah, historically it lines up, it is true. And we know what he was talking about. He was talking about the same gospel that existed in the 7th century, because we have entire gospels that exist prior to Muhammad, entire Bibles, Santiagus, Vaticanus, Alexandrius, all of them complete Bibles that existed centuries before Muhammad. And all of them say that Jesus Christ was crucified. And then along comes this guy 600 years after the fact and says, no, that didn't happen. And we're supposed to believe that without any type of evidence, any type of manuscript evidence, credible manuscript evidence saying different.
No, sorry to cut you off. Actually, that's not what the Quran says. And you did not just pay attention to what I had to say. The Quran never says you to go and take those gospel accounts as judgment criteria to discern what doctrine is. No, it doesn't say that. The Quran says you have to go to the Gospels and to the Torah to judge in people's disputes for social legislative norms. You got to use them as disputing people's affairs when they come to you asking for a judgment in certain dispute that they have between themselves. It's not judging doctrine or ascertaining the truth of the gospel or ascertaining the stories of the Torah or the gospel. No, it's not.
This is David Wood's famous line. This is the miracle of Quranic interpretation. Just tell us what the Quran means according to you, instead of what it's.
Love to have a debate with him.
In front of us, we all, this. It's 2026. We can all read for comprehension here.
Of course. When you misread, that's when a debate is needed, and I'm willing to debate David Wood on it.
Okay, guys, let's get in this last question. It's been a fun debate. It's been again, you guys are good sports. I appreciate you being willing to expand on the topic. Always very helpful in the Q&A, asking clarifying questions and expanding on the issues at hand. So let's wrap it up with this. We'll start with you, Daniel, to give Eric at least one final word here in the Q&A. Eric, I appreciate you being patient with us. All the questions were for Daniel. So, okay, $2 super chat. Thank you, Isaac, Eric, and Daniel. I'm not sure what that word means, but steelman your opponent's position.
What does that mean, steelman? And Isa, it's Isa Kabir. He comes to my show all the time.
Isa, well, Isa, it's good to have you here.
Isa's a great guy. Everybody loves Isa. I don't know what steelman means. What is that? Steelman your
steelman means, so a straw man would be like if I misrepresented someone's position and then refuted it while I'm refuting a straw man, right? A steelman is accurately representing your opponent's position and then showing why it's wrong, perhaps.
Okay. That's pretty easy. We have a mountain of evidence on one side saying that Jesus Christ was crucified.
Did you say I should go first or what?
Oh yeah, yeah. To be fair, let's have Daniel go first and then Eric. That way you can get the last word.
Okay, sorry.
All right, okay, I can give it to you, Eric. So, thing is this: the way I would steelman it would be like this. If Eric came up and said to me, "Look, we have James, Peter, Paul, Mary, and other disciples of Christ, Thomas." Andrew, Bartholomew, all of these disciples coherently agreed upon what really happened to Jesus, the way he was put on cross, and not really dramatizing the event of crucifixion as we find in the gospel accounts, but gave a very systemic historical account of what really happened. And there were Roman attestations of the fact that this happened. And these historians, even though they were not contemporary, they were Tacitus and Josephus, or I don't even know how to pronounce his name. what's his name, whatever it is, these non-contemporary historians, secular, and who were not friendly, hostile sources, if they quoted, we have, seeing that they had clear access to the Roman administrative records, and they pulled out these administrative records and said, okay, here is the records, and we've cited it, Josephus has cited it, Tacitus cited it, then that would be a premise where you could argue the Quran gets it wrong. The Quran gets it incorrect. It clearly goes against the historical records. But none of that is true. There's absence and silence of this historical records and historicity of Jesus's account. There's no biographical material from these early Christians. And in this void and gap, we have a clear trajectory of how it has been elaborated. And even scholars like Dennis MacDonald argue that these are tropes from the Greco-Roman literature of Homer and Iliad. All of these scholars who are talking about fabrication of these accounts of death, burial, and resurrection, and then the Quran comes 600 years later and tells and informs us that these are conjectures and nothing of this happened, guess where is the truth?
Eric, over to you.
Okay, this is just denial. It's like he's from Egypt. Denial. He says that if we had early attestation of all these people that were supposedly eyewitnesses, Daniel, we do have early attestation. That's your problem. We do have early attestation in the form of the four synoptic gospels and the Gospel of John and the epistles of Paul, John, and Peter. We have all this attestation that you're talking about. What we don't have, and this is what is absolutely amazing, and even in the early attestation, we could even just remove the biblical attestation for it. When you talk about Tacitus, Josephus, Lucian of Samosata, Pelagian, who is the other ones that I cited? The Jewish Talmud. Who else were we have on here? It doesn't matter. I mean, it's Celsus. I mean, all these other guys that I cited. We do have the testimony of these people. This is how history is done. What we don't have is one single document, credible document. You know, you can cite the Basilides, the second great treatise. I don't care. There's not credible. There's not no Gnostic heresies. What we don't have is a document from the first century that says that Jesus Christ was not crucified. That's what we don't have. What we don't have is a document following that all the way up to the 6th century that is anything credible. And then we bump into Muhammad 600 years later, says, oh, it didn't happen. Well, what is your proof? Well, I said so. Well, how can we believe that you said so? Well, I got it from Allah. Oh, this Allah, like I said, the same one that says Miriam is the mother of Jesus and the sister of Aaron, the same one that says Haman is building a tower with the Pharaoh, that says the Pharaoh is crucifying people 1,000 years before crucifixion was even invented. This has no credibility in any academic circles, period. You ask Yasser Qadi, can the Quran, the Sirah, and all of that literature be taken seriously in academia as legitimate attestation? And the answer is no. Everybody rejects it outright because they know it's incorrect. So when we talk about steel manning this position, it's a mountain of evidence against one guy, trust me, bro, 600 years later, that gets everything else wrong on top of that. Jesus Christ was crucified in the 1st century. If we know anything historical or historical fact at all, we know that.
I don't think you did justice to Steelman my position. But anyway, the claim, only if there is a claim, there is denial. Okay, so if there is a claim, there is a denial. So I can't go before the claim, before the story of manufactured, before 70 AD, and produce a denial. Because the claim did not exist. The claim only evolved post 70 AD.
Where is the denial? Where can I find it?
Therefore comes denial later on.
Where?
The denial cannot be sourced from prior to 70 AD because the development of the story only happens post 70 AD.
Well,
So I cannot go to the earliest source and deny Christ was not crucified.
there's not a historian out there that is going to give any type of legitimacy to a claim that was made 600 years later without any type of documentation that goes.
These historians were not writing the biographical material.
Documentation of a mountain of evidence from the first century. It just doesn't happen.
Not good enough, though. That mountain of evidence is not good enough because they were not writing the biographical material of Christ.
What?
Those historians were not writing biographical material of Christ. They were writing on a different theme entirely, on the Christian suppression of by Nero, or the Judo-Christian wars. The Judo-Roman wars.
That history includes what? The crucifixion of Christ. So they were writing on it.
It's not. It's a passing comment. It's a passing comment that Tacitus provides.
Passing comment or not, it is
historical. He doesn't back it up.
It is
not historical.
It is attestation to the crucifixion of Christ that is early.
He just quotes the passing legends. He does not give any evidence whatsoever.
Nothing that indicates that he thinks that it was a legend. There's no evidence of that. He writes it as his history.
It's just like
gentlemen, I'm going to jump. I'm going to give Eric the last word because Daniel, you got most of the last words here. Since most of the questions were for you, but it was fun. This was good. You guys were good sports. This was a fast-paced, stimulating debate, and there was a lot of information here. I enjoyed this. I feel like I learned a lot about the differing position on this issue and how it would be engaged. So Eric, Daniel, great stuff. To the audience, thank you so much for all the live chat interaction. I always enjoy reading what's going on in the live chat. Great questions that came in. I appreciate the super chats and support. We had a lot of good questions come in, actually. Shows that people are interested in this topic. So, okay, let's do some quick final words, final thoughts. Eric, it was your first time here on the Standing for Truth debate platform. I hope to see you here again in the future. And I hope you had a good time. Let's hand it to you for some final words, final thoughts. And again, thanks for doing this.
I love debating this topic. And Donnie, again, thank you so much for hosting this. I know it digs into your own personal time to do this, and for somebody to get out here and do this, it's a real treat for me, and I appreciate you doing this for us. And I will say again, and I want to just emphasize this point, that the crucifixion of Jesus Christ on a cross in first century Jerusalem is the pivotal event that saves our souls from an eternity of hell. To know what Jesus Christ did for us, which is pay the penalty for our sins, is one of the most well-documented events in world history. And you can trust that. You can trust what Christ did for us. To deny that is exactly what Satan wants you to believe. That no, Jesus did not die for your sins on a cross. You can do it. You can do it on your own, and you can't. So I hope tonight the information that I was able to present from multiple sources, early sources, hostile sources, shows you the truthfulness and the love of Christ and what he has done for us on that cross. And to deny it is exactly what Satan wants you to do.
Eric, thank you very much. It was my pleasure. I love these debates, and I really appreciate the fact I get to host and moderate so many, because every debate is a learning opportunity, and we wouldn't have so many great debates if it wasn't for people like you guys being willing to participate in them. So thank you very much, Eric. For those that want to see more from Eric, please do check the description box of this video for a link to his channel. Daniel, always appreciate having you here. Again, you're a good sport. I want to thank you for allowing me to jump in a little bit, asking some clarifying questions. It made the debate a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. So Daniel, appreciate you doing this. Final words, final thoughts, and thanks again.
Hey, Donnie, I love you. Actually, I really admire your work. The amount of hours you put in your services to the glory of God, it's incredible. But what I was recently contemplating was people should really recognize neutrality and award or reward neutrality. I see channels that are biased like the sheep pour in there, like thousands and thousands, hundreds and thousands, and a channel like Donnie's channel, where he sort of provides a neutral platform for people like myself to come and engage, must be really appreciated. And people should subscribe and smash the like button, and share and encourage people to subscribe to neutral platforms, because all of these people, God Logic and Sam Shimon, even if I go, they would just ban me out. I'm not even allowed into their StreamYard. But people like that, who are heavily prejudiced and biased, have hundreds and thousands of subscriptions. And people like Donnie, who sort of does his best to give a neutral platform where people with completely opposing views come and articulate in what is called as a meaningful debate, to have their understanding validated, I think deserves a much greater appreciation by the crowds, and a much greater job done by the crowds, basically. If you go onto those channels, crowds go really mad bulls, and they keep the chat so busy, and YouTube does work on it. But at the same time, people like Donnie, who's doing a beautiful work, in my opinion, at least providing a platform for me to come and engage and present my Islamic side of the story, this neutrality of this channel should be really appreciated by fans a lot more than it is at the moment. So I really appreciate Donnie, and I really appreciate Eric, you coming along and taking this debate. Especially you've been sick in the lead up to this debate, and I do look forward to your new debate topics. If you want me to engage there on some of the historical errors that you mentioned that are in the Quran, I would love to engage there. And if Donnie wants to host them, I would be glad to come and have those things debated out. And thank you so much, guys. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, my pleasure, Daniel. I appreciate. Thank you for the kind words and encouragement. Okay, Eric and Daniel, thanks again for an excellent debate here tonight. Thank you for the time you took to prep for it and the time we took for it. So, Eric, Daniel, thanks again to the audience. Hope you had as much fun as I did. Thank you for the engagement, the interaction, and the support. God bless you all. Stand for Truth is signing off.